Along with Feng Xuanzi announcing the final list of names, the atmosphere before the martial emperor's Warsoul tablet fell into strange silence. The numerous cultivators present were slightly surprised, bewildered, and in disbelief. Everyone present knew clearly of the strength of Xianxia and the others. Yet now, merely one of them was recruited as a disciple of the Heavenflow Dao sect, whereas no one showed any interest in the others? How could this be possible? Not to mention the others, but even a top outstanding talent like Xianxia wasn't recruited, and this was extremely difficult for everyone to understand. After all, Xianxia's name was still strikingly displayed at the position of the first on the Warsoul tablet behind them, and it wasn't just that, because in terms of reputation there wasn't a single person in Primeval City capable of comparing with him. He'd gone against the entire Shang clan by himself, annihilated a strand of a heavenly immortal's will by himself, and he'd even annihilated 4 Xeno-race experts during the final test. However, such a peerless genius that possessed the potential to mature into an exalted figure had actually not been selected. How could anyone have expected such an outcome? Even if they disregarded Xianxia, every single one of the disciples of the Darchu dynasty was extremely outstanding, and practically all their rankings were in the top 20 of the Warsoul tablet. But they were similarly not chosen by any of the sections. Isn't this too weird? All of this allowed everyone to faintly sense that this was a scheme that targeted the Darchu dynasty. However, even though they felt extreme pity towards the situation Xianxia and the others were in, yet none of them dared say a thing, because their fate was similarly held in the hands of those emissaries of the Dark Reverie. The 10+ emissaries stood in midair with an impressive and dignified manner like gods, and it was utterly impossible to discern merely from their expressions that this was an action that was planned beforehand. But attentive people were still able to notice that the gazes of these emissaries intentionally or unintentionally avoided the location of the disciples of the Darchu dynasty. On the other hand, a wisp of a smile was revealed from the corners of Feng Jianbai and Shang Ke's mouths, and the gazes they shot at Xianxia and the others were filled with ridicule, pity, resentment, and so on and so forth. Both of them had enmity with Xianxia and were only too anxious to see this scene occur. At this moment, when he saw Xianxia and the others reveal expressions of discontent and disappointment, both of them truly wished for nothing more than to roar with laughter. All right, the name list has already been announced. Those disciples that haven't been selected don't have to be discouraged. The Dark Reverie is a vast and large world. There are countless sects and experts that reign numerous like trees in a forest within it. After all of you enter the Dark Reverie, perhaps you'll encounter your own fortune. Ancestor Zi Ming spoke with a low voice. As soon as these words were spoken, it was equivalent to the results being certain, and it was impossible for Xianxia and the others to refute the decision. Meanwhile, the scene was extremely strange. Amongst the 113 experts of the various dynasties, 99% had been selected by the various powers of the Dark Reverie, and these disciples were standing behind the various emissaries at this moment. Only Xianxia and the others stood alone at the opposite of them, and they'd become the small group of people that hadn't been selected. This was a type of strong comparison that caused Xianxia and the others to seem like abandoned sheep, and they seemed slightly pitiable, causing most people to reveal expressions of pity. A group of proud geniuses had fallen to such an extent now, so how could it not cause them to sigh with emotion? There's no time to lose. Let's make a move together and open the passageway that leads to the Dark Reverie. Yun Lanxing sighed before he spoke out. The other earthly immortal realm experts from the Dark Reverie nodded successively. Wait a moment. However, right at this moment, a chilly voice that sounded like a flowing fountain resounded out as Qing Xiui took a step forward, and her cold gaze swept the emissaries of the Dark Reverie before it finally descended onto Yun Lanxing. When did I agree to join your Heavenflow Dao sect? As soon as these words were spoken, they weren't inferior to a thunderclap that shook the disciples of the various dynasties to the point of revealing astounded expressions, and even the other emissaries of the Dark Reverie revealed shocked expressions as they seemed to have never imagined that there would actually be someone that wanted to give up such a great piece of good luck. After Xianxia and the others were slightly stunned, a wisp of warmth gushed out from within their hearts, because they knew that reason Qing Xiui had acted in this way was entirely because she'd made the resolution to stay by their sides through thick and thin. This piece of friendship was priceless. It was especially so for Xianxia, because he understood the most about importance of the Heavenflow Dao sect to Xianxia. However, at this moment, she'd resolutely given up on returning to the sect of her previous life, and besides causing him to be moved, this decision made his heart ache faintly. If it wasn't for me, would Shui have to act in this way? If it wasn't because of me, how could all my companions have fallen to this extent? A feeling of deep self-accusation silently gushed into his heart. No one had noticed that Xianxia's fists were already clenched tightly. The veins on the back of his hand bulged while his nails sunk deeply into his palm, causing strands of scarlet red blood to flow out. Xianxia, your path is in the Heavenflow Dao sect. Giving it up like this is equivalent to destroying your own future. You should follow me back to the sect. There are some things that can't be solved by being willful. Yun Lanxing frowned as he sighed. How could he not understand Xianxia's feelings? However, he had to take Xianxia back to the Heavenflow Dao sect no matter what. This was decided by Bing Shirtian's will, and not a single person present as capable of changing this. Yun Lanxing, you were still an outer court disciple while I was cultivating at the Heavenflow Dao sect, right? Since when did you dare to speak to me like this? Xianxia spoke coldly. The scalps of everyone went numb when they heard this. My God! This woman is actually the senior sister of an emissary? This identity is too shocking. Only those emissaries of the Dark Reverie had known all of this since long ago, and all of them seemed to be rather composed. Yun Lanxing himself had never imagined that Xianxia would actually use her identity to suppress him at this moment, and he couldn't help but sigh and laugh bitterly. Senior Sister Qing, I'm doing this for your own good. The sect master and all the elders of the sect are anxiously awaiting your return, so I hope you don't make it difficult for me. Everyone present felt as if they'd gone crazy when they heard Yun Lanxing admit the relationship between him and Xianxia, and it was as if they'd heard a strange and unusual legend. Since when could the disciple of an ordinary dynasty actually be able to become the senior sister of an earthly immortal realm expert from an extraordinary power of the Dark Reverie? But they came to an understanding in next to no time. Xianxia was a reincarnated heavenly immortal, and she probably cultivated in the Heavenflow Dao sect during her previous life. Amongst the people present, only Shang Ke's expression had become extremely unsightly as he felt fear from the incident that happened the other day. Their young master Shang Kuan intended to use Xianxia as a cultivation vessel to cultivate a devil technique that day, and if they knew beforehand that Xianxia's origins were so great, they wouldn't dare do it, no matter how brave they were. So what you mean is if I'm unwilling to leave with you, then you'll use force? Xianxia replied coldly with a question. Yun Lanxing was stunned and struggled endlessly in his heart. During his youth, Xianxia was similarly an existence that couldn't be disrespected in his heart, and even if it was today, this reverence still existed eternally in his heart. How could he have imagined that the day would come where he used force against the senior sister he respected the most? But if I don't do that, then how would I be able to take senior sister with me? Yun Lanxing was hesitating, and his expression changed indeterminately. Everyone sighed endlessly with emotion when they saw this. If word of this were to be spread, then being able to place an 8th-level earthly immortal realm expert into such a difficult situation is something that she can be proud of. The level of reverence Xianxia's status in the Heavenflow Dao sect commanded was obvious from this. Shui, don't make it so difficult for junior brother Yun. Right when the situation fell into a deadlock, a clear and resounding voice suddenly sounded out from the distance, and then a handsome figure suddenly arrived. This person was precisely Bing Shirtian. His clothes and jet-black dense hair fluttered in the wind, and immortal energy even flowed around his body, causing him to reveal the unique, imposing aura of a heavenly immortal. At the instant he appeared, he'd become the one and only center of attention. No matter if it was the disciples of the various dynasties or the emissaries, all of them revealed reverence when they saw Bing Shirtian, and they held their breaths in concentration and didn't dare rashly speak another word for fear of infuriating Bing Shirtian in the slightest. Only Xianxia revealed a trace of coldness that flashed within his eyes as he thought in his heart. He's finally willing to make an appearance. She already detested Bing Shirtian to the extreme because everything that happened today could be said to have been done by Bing Shirtian, so how could he not be furious and resentful? Who allowed you to address me in that way? Qing Shui's voice was like ice, and she spoke completely bluntly while utterly disregarding whether Bing Shirtian was a heavenly immortal or an ant. This sort of flinty attitude caused everyone present to be endlessly astounded in their hearts. Bing Shirtian was stunned, and then he smiled. Senior sister, your temper is still like before and hasn't changed in the slightest. This can't be any better, because this is your true self. Once you return to the Heavenflow Dao sect, the sect master and the various elders will surely be extremely delighted. Didn't you hear her? Shui has already decided to not return with all of you. She suddenly spoke out, causing everyone present to be shocked in their hearts, as they never expected he would actually dare speak at this moment, nor did they imagine that he would be so discourteous when speaking to a heavenly immortal. Most shocking of it all was she addressed Qing Shui as Shui. Yet Qing Shui actually didn't reveal any objections. Merely these words allowed everyone to realize why the Darchu dynasty had fallen into such a situation, and the reason was probably between Bing Shirtian, Shi, and Qing Shui. What was the reason that was the easiest to cause conflict between two men and a woman? The answer was already self-evident. It was surely the word love. At this moment, practically everyone came to an understanding, and they were extremely shocked in their hearts. Never had they imagined that she would actually fight for a woman with a heavenly immortal. Moreover, he seemed to have gained the upper hand. Bing Shirtian sensed the various gazes that shot over from the surroundings, causing the smile on his face to vanish gradually to the point of transforming into a calm expression, and this calm expression of his revealed indescribable icy coldness. Senior sister, your memories from your previous life haven't recovered. Forgive your junior brother for this offense, but I'll have to wrong you for now. After being silent for a long time, he suddenly spoke out with a gentle voice. Right at the same time that he spoke, his right hand stretched out lightly and carried an otherworldly aura as he directly pulled Qing Shui over to him before lightly patting her shoulder, causing her to instantly fall into deep slumber. This process occurred too swiftly to the point everyone present only felt something flash before their eyes, and when they looked over once more, Qing Shui had already fallen asleep and was passed over to Yun Lanxing. Such ability looked to be extremely simple, yet it fully displayed the might of a heavenly immortal, and besides causing everyone present to be shocked, they felt even more reverent towards Bing Shirtian. On the other side, the expressions of Shi and the others turned to extreme rage. Never had they imagined that Bing Shirtian would actually intend to take Qing Shui away with such forceful methods. Heavenly immortals. They wandered the universe, moving freely above the 9 heavens, and lived eternally throughout the ages. Heavenly immortals. They looked down upon the heavens and the earth and controlled a myriad of profound techniques. So why would they be afraid of the rumors and gossip in the mortal dimension? Bing Shirtian's sudden actions could be said to have fully displayed the overbearingness of a heavenly immortal. Everyone was slightly stunned before tacitly approving this fact. The reason was extremely simple. This was the action of a heavenly immortal, and in this expanse of the heavens and the earth, a heavenly immortal was everything, and a heavenly immortal represented a supreme will that couldn't be disrespected. At this moment, Qing Shui being forcefully seized had already caused Shi to hate Bing Shirtian to the bone. Now, do you have anything to say? Bing Shirtian held his hands behind his back while looking down indifferently at Shi and asking with an indifferent tone. This was the first time he spoke with Shi, and his voice was calm while carrying overbearing oppressively and even carried a feeling of disdain that was like a cat playing with a mouse. I never imagined that a heavenly immortal would actually be so shameless. If I knew earlier, I ought to have watched you die at the hands of those 4 xenorace experts. Shi puckered his lips while he spoke coldly. The hearts of everyone thumped when they heard this because Shi's words were simply directly ridiculing Bing Shirtian in his face as someone who didn't seek to repay his benefactor but harmed his benefactor instead. This is simply an offense to Bing Shirtian's honor. This kid is probably going to suffer now. The same thought arose simultaneously in the minds of everyone. You truly boast without shame. I wonder how Shui took a fancy to you. Unexpectedly, Bing Shirtian didn't get infuriated and kill Chun Shi. A wisp of a disdainful smile arose on the corners of his mouth as he shook his head and said, "Would you have been able to do all of this with that little strength of yours? If you're really capable, then you probably wouldn't watch on helplessly as Shui is taken away by me, right?" Chun Shi's heart sank instantly when he heard this. Looks like this fellow has already guessed that it's impossible for the tiny cauldron to reveal invincible might like it did yesterday. And this is why he dares to be so unbridled, right? Since you have nothing to say, then I'll be settling a debt with you next. Bing Shirtian's expression recovered its indifference as he stared coldly at Chun Shi, and a wisp of killing intent gushed out in his eyes. As a cultivator, you actually dared to offend my honor. What should be the punishment for this? Bang! Along with the strand of killing intent gushing out, the entire world instantly dimmed down as an extremely oppressive and terrifying aura enveloped the surroundings. The airflow in the sky roiled and space droned with an impetus that was exceedingly astounding, and it caused the hearts of everyone present to tremble endlessly. Moreover, Chun Shi was the first to bear the brunt of it. He felt his mind drone as his entire body seemed to have been suppressed within a boundless abyss, causing his breathing to become difficult, and no matter how he struggled, he was incapable of escaping being locked onto by this strand of killing intent. There was nothing he could do about it. The gap between him and Bing Shirtian was too far. Even though it was only a strand of killing intent, one was a cultivator while the other was a heavenly immortal. They were never existences of the same level, so how could he escape it? At this moment, Chun Shi's face was warped. His eyes were crimson red and blazed with flames of anger, and he entirely seemed like a trapped beast in a hopeless situation and was filled with unwillingness. Chun Shi, Zhen Luqing and the others were greatly terrified, and all of them moved forward in unison with the intention of assisting him. However, Bing Shirtian had raised his hand to strike out an immortal technique to confine them before they could even approach him, and they were incapable of moving any longer. Most of the other people revealed expressions of being unable to bear the sight of this, yet they were powerless to stop anything. This was the punishment of a heavenly immortal, so who would dare obstruct it? You actually dare offend a heavenly immortal? You're really heedless of consequence. Feng Jianbai sneered endlessly in his heart. How satisfying. It's best if this kid is killed, so as to put an end to all future troubles. On the other side, Xianxia was similarly excited to the extreme, and he laughed savagely without end in his heart. Senior brother Bing, he's only a junior. Why fuss about it with him with your status? Give junior brother some face and let him off this time. Right at this moment, the nearby Yun Lanxing suddenly spoke out and persuaded. Bing Shirtian frowned when he saw Yun Lanxing speak, and he was slightly displeased. Junior brother Yun, this kid offended me in public. Could it be that he doesn't deserve to be punished? Senior brother Bing. Yun Lanxing spoke hastily. Forget it. Bing Shirtian waved his hand to interrupt Yun Lanxing. Junior brother Yun, I won't kill him today because of you. Thank you, senior brother Bing. Yun Lanxing heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. He knew how much Qing Shui cared about Chen Shi, and once this kid died, he truly didn't know how he would explain it to Qing Shui. Chun Shi stopped struggling and stood on the spot while staring fixedly at Bing Shirtian while the scenes from before sliced his heart like blades, causing him to already be furious to the limit. But while death can be avoided, suffering can't. Since he dared to offend me, then he must suffer some punishment. A trace of coldness appeared on the corners of Bing Shirtian's mouth as he suddenly took a step forward and shouted, "Kneel and kowtow to me to apologize for your offense. Otherwise no one in the entire world can save you." Yun Lanxing's expression went grim when he heard these words. Kneel down and beg for forgiveness? This is more painful than killing Chun Shi. Crack. Chun Shi's tightly clenched fist emitted the sound of bones rubbing together. His face was emotionless, yet the flames of rage in his heart was bubbling like lava, and he stared at Bing Shirtian's handsome face as he gritted his teeth and sneered. Don't make me look down on you. Kill me if you have the balls. Why put on an act? Are you asking for death? Bing Shirtian's gaze surged with cold lights. As a heavenly immortal, would anyone in this heavens and earth dare offend him? Now, an ant from a small world like this had repeatedly offended him, and this had already caused him to be really furious. I'll give you one more chance. Will you do as I say or not? Bing Shirtian's expression was icy cold and revealed killing intent, while the terrifying aura of a heavenly immortal directly erupted and fiercely pressed down onto Xianxia's body like a mountain. Crack! Under the pressure of this sort of terrifying aura that didn't belong to the mortal world, Xianxia's knees bent abruptly, and then he exerted all his strength to forcefully resist this pressure, while the bones in his entire body ceaselessly emitted cracking sounds from being unable to bear the burden. I never noticed that you have some backbone. When he saw Xianxia was actually able to avoid kneeling beneath the pressure he emitted, Bing Shirtian's gaze flashed as he sneered endlessly, and a pressure gushed out explosively from him once again. Bang! The ground Xianxia stood on directly shattered and collapsed, and it was forcefully pressured to the point of exploding. The true essence in Xianxia's body circulated madly as his shaman energy surged, and he forcefully resisted this terrifying pressure that almost suffocated him. Up until now, he finally completely understood exactly how big the gap between the rebirth realm and the heavenly immortal realm was. The terrifying pressure that seemed to be everywhere ceaselessly intended to pressure him to the point of kneeling, whereas Xianxia was madly deducing his own various abilities and trump cards. However, the outcome caused his heart to feel slightly heavy. Even if he utilized his most concealed trump cards, he would be unable to injure Bing Shirtian because this fellow was truly too strong. Xianxia, Zhen Luqing and the others exclaimed. They saw Xianxia's face had warped while the veins on his forehead bulged explosively. It seemed as if he was enduring boundless pain, and the skin that covered his entire body was exceedingly red to the point it seemed on the verge of bleeding, causing his appearance to be painful to look at. Senior Brother Bing, it's already enough. Could it be that you really want to pressure him to death? Yun Lanqing frowned as he sighed. No, how could I possibly kill him? Bing Shirtian had an indifferent expression, and his voice revealed dense disdain. No matter what, he saved my life yesterday, and he's my benefactor. Everyone in the surroundings sighed endlessly in their hearts when they heard this, because they naturally discerned that Bing Shirtian was ridiculing Xianxia for overestimating his abilities. Actually, if one considered it carefully, if it wasn't for Xianxia's actions yesterday, it would indeed be impossible for any of them to survive. But it just so happened that it was a mysterious and great figure who'd turned the situation around and not Xianxia himself. So no matter if they felt gratitude towards Xianxia or not, their actions could be accepted. Bing Shirtian had precisely taken notice of this and dared to deal with Xianxia in such an unbridled manner while not feeling the slightest pressure in his heart. Under the gazes of everyone in the surroundings, Xianxia's body trembled ceaselessly as cold sweat flowed down like a stream from his entire body. His face was ghastly pale as cracking sounds of his bones breaking apart resounded out explosively. Only his gaze still remained unyielding and stubborn, while revealing an expression of resolution and firmness that was like a sword that would rather be broken than bent. Benefactor? Humph. Bing Shirtian, is this how you treat your benefactor? Right at this moment, an aged and hoarse voice suddenly resounded out in the surroundings, and when everyone shot their gazes over, it was actually Madman Lu that entered their eyes. He was still extremely slovenly as before, with a goatee, a pungent smell of wine, and intoxicated and muddy eyes. However, at the instant he appeared before Xianxia, his entire disposition changed instantly. An extremely vast and fierce aura erupted from his gaunt body and shot directly into the sky, and it shook the clouds and the wind in the surroundings. After that, strands of boundless immortal energy flowed out from his body, while a myriad of divine radiances illuminated the world, and his vast divine might caused everyone to feel shock that arose from the heart. In merely an instant, all the pressure Bing Shirtian executed was completely disintegrated and dissipated without the slightest bit remaining. The expressions of everyone turned to shock when they saw this scene, and their pupils constricted abruptly. It was difficult for them to believe everything that had occurred before their eyes at this moment. Madman Lu actually disintegrated the imposing aura of a heavenly immortal. Bing Shirtian's eyes squinted, and then he recalled something and said with surprise, "The physique of an immortal has been formed, yet is capable of deceiving the workings of the heavens to not ascend into the immortal dimension. You are actually a forsaker of the heavens." Everyone that heard this instantly seemed as if they were struck by lightning. Even though they were unable to guess what a forsaker of the heavens was, they were able to discern a possibility from Bing Shirtian's words, and that possibility was that Madman Lu might be a heavenly immortal. "I have an extremely free and happy life in the mortal dimension, and I just can't be bothered to go to the immortal dimension to be supervised." Madman Lu shook his head. "Humph. You've already revealed your immortal physique now and have been noticed by the workings of the heavens. You'll be forcefully drawn into the immortal dimension in less than 3 days. At that time, you'll probably face extremely serious consequences." Bing Shirtian sneered. "But do you believe that I can't kill you right now?" Madman Lu glanced at Bing Shirtian as he said indifferently, "Fuck off. All of you better seize the opportunity, before I change my mind, to fuck off back to the dark reverie." His voice was like a thunderclap that resounded out in the world. Madman Lu's explosive shout shook everyone present. The way he said "fuck off" was so overbearing to the point it seemed that he didn't even take Bing Shirtian, who was a heavenly immortal, seriously, and his arrogant expression caused everyone present to feel suffocated and reveal astonished expressions. Even Zhen Luqing and the others were stunned, as they utterly never imagined that this dirty geezer, who was usually slovenly and had a grumpy temper, would actually have such an overbearing side, and it was simply unbelievable. "Are you speaking to me?" Bing Shirtian's face sank, and his icy cold gaze could almost kill. "Who else? If it was your true body present here, then perhaps I would be slightly afraid. But now, I'm completely certain of being able to annihilate you." Madman Lu rolled his eyes as he spoke with disdain. "Do you really think that no one is capable of restraining you if you hide in the mortal dimension?" Flames of rage roiled within Bing Shirtian's eyes as he was completely furious this time. Who was he? He was a supreme heavenly immortal. So when had he suffered such treatment? However, there was a tiny ant that repeatedly offended his honor, and now a dirty geezer had jumped out and spoken disrespectfully to him. All of this caused Bing Shirtian to be enraged to the extreme. Blood flows into rivers when an emperor is enraged, and when a heavenly immortal is enraged, it could even destroy a small world. Even though Bing Shirtian was only an external avatar at this moment, if he were to risk his life, then the destructive force he emitted would absolutely be something unbelievable to everyone present. "Oh? You really want to try?" Madman Lu took a step forward, causing his goatee to flutter as a terrifying aura that caused the heavens and the earth to be cast into a shadow gushed out explosively from his body. This was the killing intent that belonged to a heavenly immortal. When the heavens emitted killing intent, the stars and constellations moved. When the earth emitted killing intent, all living creatures moved, and when a mortal emitted killing intent, the heavens and earth were overturned, whereas the killing intent of a heavenly immortal was sufficient to destroy an entire world. "Humph! The ignorant are really fearless," Bing Shirtian sneered, and with a flip of his hand, a decree that glowed with brilliant golden light and emitted blazing rays of immortal light floated on his palm. At the instant it appeared, it actually emanated supreme majesty that caused everyone to wish for nothing more than to kneel down in worship and pray devotedly. A decree of the immortal dimension? Madman Lu's eyes suddenly erupted with a wisp of cold lights, and he was slightly shocked and seemed to be surprised that such a treasure would appear in the hands of Bing Shirtian. "Yes, I shouldered the mission of the immortal dimension to investigate the source of the upheaval of the 3 dimensions when I descended to the mortal dimension this time, whereas this treasure had naturally fallen into my hands." Bing Shirtian roared with laughter, and his voice was icy cold to the extreme. "This decree is only an immortal artifact to others, and it's nothing special. But it's different for you. You're a forsaker of the heavens. So how long can you hide once I utilize this decree?" Madman Lu's expression had finally turned grim. Bing Shirtian was right. The decree of the immortal dimension had the supreme will that belonged solely to the immortal dimension branded upon it. Once someone like him that had ascended to become a heavenly immortal yet hadn't ascended into the immortal dimension encountered the summons of a decree of the immortal dimension, then he would be forcefully drawn into the immortal dimension in less than the time for an incense stick to burn. Good, very good. You, Bing Shirtian, actually possess such a treasure. You've indeed opened my eyes today, but... Madman Lu sneered as a wisp of ruthlessness flashed on his face. Do you think I'm unable to kill you before I'm drawn into the immortal dimension? Bing Shirtian's expression froze, and then he laughed coldly. Why don't you try? The atmosphere was all set for a showdown. The collision between these two great figures caused everyone in the surroundings to feel utterly horrified, and they were completely incapable of interfering. Even those emissaries of the dark reverie had serious expressions and were extremely terrified. At this moment, the hearts of everyone was at their throats as they looked at the battle between heavenly immortals that was about to erupt, causing them to feel as if their souls were about to leave their bodies, and they wished for nothing more than to turn around and flee. The reason was extremely simple. Once both of them fought, this expanse of the heavens and the earth would probably be destroyed, and they would absolutely die a graveless death if it were to affect them. Amidst this silence, Xianxia looked silently at the gaunt figure that stood before him, and he felt warm and sorrowful, but mostly furious. Merely because of Bing Shirtian alone, so many things had happened today. He'd implicated Xianxia's companions to the point of being unable to enter any power of the dark reverie. And now even Madman Lu was implicated. All this caused Xianxia to be furious to the limit. Xianxia, do you still remember what I said? If both of us join forces, then I have a 30% certainty in being able to heavily injure or even kill him. You can consider this. While his entire heart was interwoven with rage and resentment, the voice of the tiny cauldron suddenly resounding out in his heart. 30%. When he heard this extremely low amount of certainty, Xianxia's mind that was almost lost to his rage instantly sobered up greatly, and his blood-red eyes stared fixedly at Bing Shirtian, who was laughing coldly as he said abruptly, Senior Lu, thank you for your good intentions this time. If I have the chance, I'll surely repay you in the future. Now, please move away temporarily and leave this matter to me. Xianxia's voice that sounded out abruptly seemed to be extremely unexpected in this silent and nervous atmosphere. In the next moment, the gazes of everyone that was surprised and bewildered shot over to him. Could it be that this kid wants to sacrifice himself in exchange for Madman Lu's safety? Don't talk nonsense. You stand over there obediently. Madman Lu frowned as he shouted in a low voice. Senior, I might encounter situations that are even more dangerous than this in the future. What should I do if you aren't present at that time? Xianxia said calmly, Allow me to do this. Bing Shirtian is my enemy, and if I don't even have the courage to go against him, then it'll probably be impossible for me to become an immortal in my entire lifetime. You? Madman Lu intended to flare up, yet as soon as he encountered Xianxia's gaze, his heart trembled for no reason, and he was actually stunned to the point of speechlessness. What sort of gaze was this? It was calm and clear like snow, with resolution and firmness deep within, and it was like the gaze of a fearless warrior on the battlefield. Even if the road ahead was covered in thorns, mountains of blades, and seas of flames, it would be unable to make him frown in the slightest. Ha! Do you think that you'll be able to ensure the safety of everyone if you do this? Bing Shirtian suddenly roared with laughter, and his voice revealed dense disdain. I've already decided that it isn't just you. Even your companions will all be unable to enter the dark reverie. What? Everyone in the surroundings gasped, and they understood in their hearts that Bing Shirtian had probably aroused the intent to kill because of Xianxia's repeated offense. As soon as these words were spoken, they were surely impossible to be changed. Xianxia, it's all right. Even if we die today, we still support your decision. Huangfu Qingying and the others seemed to be extremely composed instead when facing this scene, and all of them spoke out successively with support towards Xianxia. Obviously, they'd already prepared themselves for death at this moment. Xianxia turned around, and the thought in his mind from before grew even firmer as he looked at the firm expressions on the faces of Huangfu Qingying and the others. Don't worry. No one is capable of obstructing us from entering the dark reverie today. Humph. Shameless boasting. Let me see what ability a tiny ant like you possesses to talk so big. Bing Shirtian sneered. She didn't continue speaking, and he took a deep breath as he said slowly in his heart, "Tiny cauldron, I'll be relying on you to fight by my side." Wait! However, right when she was about to put his life on the line, the tiny cauldron suddenly said, "Someone is coming. Perhaps there'll be a favorable turn of events." She was stunned and just about to ask when a wave of footsteps that seemed like the rumbling of thunder resounded out, and it shook him to the point he felt giddy while his eardrums were on the verge of exploding. Bang! 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 Right at this moment, the other people present here heard these footsteps that shook the heavens and the earth, and all of their expressions turned pale as they looked towards the extreme distance. The sky over there had suddenly split open into a rift that was extremely long, and a figure that could reach the sky walked out from within it. Every single step of the figure shook the surrounding space to the point of shattering while the earth quaked, and its impetus was shocking to the extreme. This figure was truly too tall, and the boundless layer of clouds was only barely capable of concealing his waist while his upper body was entirely above the layer of clouds. Most shocking of it all was the dense black mist that gushed around his body, causing everywhere he passed to transform into an expanse of darkness as if it had fallen into eternal night. Even Bing Shirtian and Madman Lu revealed shocked expressions when they saw this figure, and they seemed to have guessed something yet didn't dare confirm it. Swish! This figure that could compare in height to the sky swiftly arrived outside Primeval City, and then the layer of clouds above the city suddenly split open as an enormous head stretched over. At the instant this head appeared, the shadow it cast caused half of the entire Primeval City to be covered beneath it. The figure's eyes were like two enormous lakes that reflected a river of stars. His beard that was 3 kilometers long that densely covered his face hung down like a pitch-black waterfall. His brows were like 2 mountains that lay across the earth, and his appearance was craggy and extremely dignified. Most shocking of it all was there was actually a pair of pitch-black horns on both sides of his head, and they tore through the sky like sharp swords while suffused with a terrifying sheen. This appearance was simply like that of a formidable demon that had fought the world in the primeval times. Everyone felt suffocated when they saw this scene, and the tiny feeling as if they were an ant arose in their hearts. The great sage, Heaven Trampler? Bing Shirtian and Madman Lu recognized this person at the same time. On the other hand, the emissaries of the Dark Reverie recovered from their shock when they heard the shocked exclaims of Bing Shirtian and Madman Lu, and then their expressions changed indeterminately while their eyes revealed deep terror. The great sage, Heaven Trampler, was a formidable ox demon that came from the unknown lands of the Dark Reverie, and he'd lived for countless years. Supposedly, he'd once annihilated a heavenly immortal and was extremely lawless in his actions, causing him to seem like the devil incarnate. Everyone originally thought that this was only a legend, but when they saw the appearance of this figure that could compare in height to the sky with their own 2 eyes, everyone noticed that even if this legend wasn't true, it wasn't very far from the truth. Merely the aura emitted from this figure caused their breathing to become difficult, and it was even more horrifying than facing Bing Shirtian. "Oh, I finally arrived in time." Heaven Trampler's eyes that seemed like bloody wheels swept past everyone present, and even Bing Shirtian and Madman Lu were overlooked by him as his gaze finally descended at the side of Xianxia. Zhen Luqing was standing right there, and being looked at like this by Heaven Trampler actually caused her to have a feeling of familiarity. "Junior sister, you really are here. Ha ha ha." Heaven Trampler suddenly started roaring with laughter with a voice that seemed like surging thunderclaps, and it shook the entire primeval city to the point of trembling. The great sage, Heaven Trampler, tore through the sky with a figure that could rival the height of the sky. At this moment, his roars of laughter were simply like the roar of an enormous dragon, and waves of sound roiled out like the tide as it resounded in the entire heavens and the earth and shook the surrounding space to the point of collapsing inch by inch. The expressions of the emissaries of the Dark Reverie went pale as they hurriedly struck out with techniques that protected all the disciples by their sides, so as to avoid them having their souls injured by this wave of sound. On the other hand, Xianxia and the others were only able to remain safe and sound under the protection of Madman Lu. However, the most shocking matter was the meaning within Heaven Trampler's words. He actually said Zhen Luqing was his junior sister. This was simply like a bolt of lightning that shocked everyone to the point their jaws almost dropped off. One was a formidable ox demon that came from the unknown lands, existed for countless years, and was even rumored to have annihilated a heavenly immortal, whereas the other was a female cultivator from the Darchu dynasty that was only at the rebirth realm. How could these two people be from the same sect? Even She was greatly surprised, as he never imagined that Zhen Liuqing's origins were actually so great. As the concerned party, Zhen Liuqing was muddled as well. She'd utterly not wrapped her head around what exactly was going on. Her master was the pavilion master of the Darchu dynasty's Mistwater Pavilion. When did he take such a formidable existence as his disciple? Oh, it's I that was rash. Junior sister, you'll naturally understand everything once you return to where master is with me. Seeing Zhen Liuqing reveal a vigilant expression caused Heaven Trampler's laughter to stop abruptly, and he scratched his head as he explained. Swish! He utterly never expected that just his action of scratching his head would cause his arm that was thick like a pillar that could hold up the heavens to actually directly collapse some of the nearby buildings. Seeing Zhen Liuqing reveal a terrified expression caused him to feel a wave of embarrassment, and then he slapped himself on the head before he suddenly became smaller and transformed into a 3 m tall stalwart man that possessed a similarly overbearing and ferocious aura. But seeing this still caused everyone present to heave a sigh of relief in their hearts. His appearance that was comparable in height to the sky was truly too shocking. Junior sister, let's go. My sudden descent here has already been noticed by some bastards of the immortal dimension. Even though I'm unafraid of them, but master will surely not let me off if he finds out. Heaven Trampler chuckled as he spoke. That won't do. Zhen Liuqing had recovered her senses at this moment, and she pointed at the distant Bing Shirtian. This heavenly immortal said that he would absolutely not allow me to leave the primeval battlefield this time. The bodies of everyone trembled when they heard this. What a strong intent to take revenge. No matter who I offend in the future, I must not offend this woman. On the other hand, Bing Shirtian's expression had already become extremely unsightly. He hadn't imagined that such an unexpected event would actually occur as well, and he'd even offended a great figure that even he was extremely afraid of. Is what my junior sister said true? Heaven Trampler's eyes that were like wheels of blood looked coldly at Bing Shirtian, and his gaze was filled with ferociousness, causing him to completely reveal an appearance that seemed as if he was waiting for the chance to swallow Bing Shirtian up. Humph! Heaven Trampler. I'm an immortal emissary that holds a decree of the immortal dimension. What? Do you want to go against me? Bing Shirtian's expression was gloomy as he grunted coldly. Even though he spoke like this, everyone was able to discern that Bing Shirtian's attitude seemed to have weakened greatly, and all of this was because of the existence of Heaven Trampler. Heaven Trampler glanced at the decree that emitted a brilliant golden glow in Bing Shirtian's hand, and he couldn't help but frown as he said, How troublesome! Master will probably command me to go into closed-door cultivation for another 10,000 years if I kill you. Never mind, junior sister, let's go. I'll help you kill this bastard secretly when I have the chance in the future. Everyone was astounded. Isn't this fellow too open with what he says? How could he speak out about something that's done in secret? Bing Shirtian's face twitched fiercely as his expression turned exceedingly gloomy. If it was his true body that was present here, he would be entirely unafraid of Heaven Trampler. But, unfortunately, he was only an external avatar now, and he was utterly not a match for Heaven Trampler. So he could only stomach this insult. That won't do. Zhen Liuqing shook her head once more. Why? Could it be that there's still someone else that bullied you? Heaven Trampler's eyes stared wide open as he swept his gaze towards the surrounding people, and his appearance was utterly violent and ferocious. No. These are all my companions, the best of friends. You have to bring them along if we leave. Otherwise? Zhen Liuqing pointed at Xianxia and the others who were by her side, and she spoke out slowly. This is nothing. It's completely not a problem. Just leave it to your senior brother. Before Zhen Liuqing could finish speaking, Heaven Trampler had already agreed readily, but he pondered deeply right after that and said, Junior sister, I can bring them along, but I can't bring them back to our sect because it's a rule that Master set, and even your senior brother can't do anything about it. Zhen Liuqing smiled sweetly. That's already sufficient. Thank you, senior brother. Even though she hadn't wrapped her head around what the relationship was between her and Heaven Trampler's sect, it didn't stop her from relying on Heaven Trampler's might to help Xianxia and the others. She was already satisfied when she saw Heaven Trampler had agreed readily, and as for the future, Xianxia and the others were entirely capable of heading to the 9 Radiant Sword sect with Madman Lu to cultivate. The only thing that was a slight regret to her was that she was unable to give Bing Shirtian a good beating this time. Xianxia and the others were surprised as well, and then they heaved sighs of relief and felt extremely at ease in their hearts as well. They'd never imagined that when they were about to fall into a hopeless situation, there would actually be a such formidable existence that appeared abruptly, and the formidable existence had even helped them resolve the danger they faced. This sort of feeling was no different than obtaining new life in a hopeless situation. Bing Shirtian's heart instantly fell to rock bottom when he saw this. If he didn't kill Xianxia now, then it would probably be difficult for him to kill Xianxia in the future, but he had no choice but to accept this reality. Bing Shirtian gnashed his teeth with hatred to the point his teeth almost shattered when he thought about this. He's only a tiny ant, yet I'm unable to kill him no matter what, and he even caused my honor to be tarnished repeatedly. How will I gain a foothold in the immortal dimension like this? How will I convince everyone of my ability? That won't do. Brother Ox, you can't take 2 of them away, as they have destiny with my saintly land of Ascension, and they ought to follow me. Right at this moment, numerous fresh flowers suddenly bloomed in the sky and covered the heavens and the earth, while the sound of the Tao that seemed like the sound of nature rang melodiously and resoundingly, and it caused everything in the surroundings to seem to have instantly transformed into a paradise of immortals. Moreover, at the center of the fresh flowers that drifted in the entire sky was a yellow-browed old man with a sullen expression. He had a green-colored walking stick, had a hunched back, and seemed like an old man of the mortal world. But there wasn't a single person amongst the people present that dared look down upon him. If one looked carefully, one would be able to notice that the aura on him was deep like the ocean, and it caused others to be utterly incapable of seeing through the depth of his aura nor the level of his cultivation. He seemed to be extremely mysterious and terrifying. The saintly land of Ascension. You're Huang Meiweng. Bing Shirtian's pupils constricted abruptly as he spoke out in shock. On the other hand, everyone else was already shocked to the point their entire bodies had become stiff long ago. The saintly land of Ascension, that's similarly an ancient sect that's secluded from the world, and its existence in history is even longer than the 10 immortal sects of the Dark Reverie. Most importantly, if a sect of the Dark Reverie was capable of having the word saint within its name, then it usually meant that a true saint had once emerged from this sect. What was a saint? Someone that had exceeded the mundane and entered into sainthood. A person that was all-powerful. Once such a figure appeared, he was bound to be worshipped in the heavens and the earth, be capable of shaking the heavens and the earth, and was extremely respected. Even though everyone didn't know Huang Meiweng's identity clearly, since he was from the saintly land of Ascension, then it was sufficient to prove exactly how formidable his strength and identity was. Oh, I never expected that someone in this world would still recognize this old man. Huang Meiweng glanced at Bing Shirtian and spoke indifferently before shooting his gaze onto Heaven Trampler, and he sighed. Brother Ox, do you agree to what this old man said earlier? Do as you like. Heaven Trampler waves his hand as he spoke. So long as they're willing to leave with you, then how could I possibly obstruct you? Good, that's good. Huang Meiweng nodded, and his gaze had already descended onto Huangfu Qingying and young Master Zhou. He briefly sized them up before a wisp of a smile couldn't help but suffuse the corners of his mouth. Little fellows, did both of you enter a secret realm on the Isle of Fallen Treasures and obtain the inheritance of the Ascension flight scripture? Yes. Huangfu Qingying and young Master Zhou replied while staring blankly at Huang Meiweng. They had indeed entered a secret realm and obtained some inheritances, but what they were unable to wrap their heads around was how Huang Meiweng knew. Then it's correct. Leave with this old man. The saintly land of Ascension will finally have inheritors entering it after 8,000 years. It's truly gratifying. Huang Meiweng sighed with a light voice. Even though he said this, yet he still carried that sullen expression, and it caused everyone to have a strange feeling as they looked at him. Chun Shi and the others were extremely astounded when they saw these scenes, and it was impossible for them to have expected that the situation would actually develop to such an extent. Not only did Zhen Luqing possess the assistance of a great figure, even Huangfu Qingying and young Master Zhou had a sect as well, and such a change in events caused them to be extremely surprised. On the other hand, Huangfu Qingying and young Master Zhou had already come to an understanding at this moment. They'd actually unintentionally and unexpectedly become the inheritors of the saintly land of Ascension. Both of them looked at Chun Shi in unison when they realized this, and they were extremely grateful in their hearts because they were only able to enter the secret realm and obtain such fortune because of Chun Shi's assistance. In other words, it was completely because of Chun Shi that they were able to become the inheritors of the saintly land of Ascension. That won't do. That heavenly immortal won't allow us to leave, and he even said he wants to annihilate us. Huangfu Qingying blinked her eyes as she spoke out abruptly. Everyone was instantly stunned once again, and then they looked at each other. This excuse is simply exactly similar to what Zhen Luqing used. Sure enough, women are the most vengeful. On the other hand, Bing Shirtian's face had completely darkened, and he was angered to the point he almost spat blood. What exactly is going on today? Could it be that I'm down on luck? Oh, it's only the external avatar of a heavenly immortal. There's no need to pay attention to his threats. Huang Meiwing spoke with indifference. Bing Shirtian really wished for nothing more than to turn around and leave right away when he heard this. As a heavenly immortal, he was actually disregarded repeatedly, and such a feeling was on the verge of making him go mad. Baldy, do you really want to fight me? No. This little monk doesn't have the time to fight with you. Then why are you chasing closely behind me? I'm just going towards the same way. It's just the same way. Right at this moment, two voices resounded out once more in the distant horizon, and they seemed to be arguing all along the way with voices that were extremely loud and resounded in the entire heavens and the earth. The same thought emerged simultaneously in the minds of everyone when they saw this scene. It wouldn't be another two great figures arriving with the intention of taking those disciples of the Darchu dynasty as their disciples, right? No one present had imagined that so many unexpected changes in events would occur today. As a supreme heavenly immortal, Bing Shirtian had drawn out a forsaker of the heavens, Madman Lu, the great sage heaven trampler from the unknown lands, and the saintly land of Ascension's Huang Meiwing just for the sake of punishing Chun Shi. Every single one of these three great figures possessed strengths that were more formidable than Bing Shirtian. Moreover, they seemed to have an extremely intimate relationship with those disciples of the Darchu dynasty. Who would have imagined this would happen a few moments ago? After all, under the instruction of Bing Shirtian, there wasn't a single sect that was willing to take Chun Shi and the others. However, now everything had turned around. Madman Lu wanted to take Chun Shi with him. The great sage Heaven Trampler wanted to take Zhen Luqing with him, and Huang Meiwing wanted to take both Huangfu Qingying and young Master Zhou with him. Such a change in events didn't just cause the experts of the various dynasties to be extremely shocked to the point their hearts trembled. Even the emissaries of the Dark Reverie were shocked repeatedly and felt disbelief. The 9 Radiant Sword sect Madman Lu was ranked amongst the top 10 immortal sects of the Dark Reverie, and it even possessed the reputation of being one of the 3 great sword sects in the world. It was entirely on par with the Skirich sect, Heart Control Sword House, Heaven Flow Dao sect, and other similar immortal sects. On the other hand, the sects that Heaven Trampler and Huang Meiwing came from were even more old, mysterious, and ancient than the 10 immortal sects, and they belonged to the ranks of sects that were in seclusion from the world and only existed in legend. Such sects rarely had an appearance of an inheritor. Yet so long as one did appear, the inheritor was bound to be a leading figure that swept through the heavens and the earth, commanded the winds and clouds, and looked down on the world. For example, the great sage Heaven Trampler existed for boundless years, and he was rumored to have annihilated a heavenly immortal with his bare hands. However, the Darchu dynasty actually had a few disciples that had the fortune to be chosen as disciples by these secluded sections. Not to mention these experts of the various dynasties, even the emissaries of the Dark Reverie felt extremely shocked. Comparatively speaking, Bing Shirtian's mood was the most horrible. and his expression was extremely unsightly and gloomy to the extreme. He originally thought that by relying on his identity, he only had to execute a small scheme and would be able to doom Xianxia eternally. Yet never had he imagined that the situation would develop to such an extent. Not only did Madman Lu arrogantly ask him to fuck off, even figures like Heaven Trampler and Huang Meiwing regarded him as an ant that was beneath their notice. How could Bing Shirtian, who was a great heavenly immortal that was always respected no matter where he went, accept this? But it just so happened that he had no choice but to tolerate it for now. Because he knew clearly that no matter if it was Heaven Trampler or Huang Meiwing, both of them were capable of easily killing him. So no matter how furious he was, he didn't dare make a rash move, and such an extremely grievous feeling caused him to be on the verge of spitting blood. However, before everyone could recover from these waves of shock, two grand voices had actually resounded out once more in the distant horizon, and it instantly caused the hearts of everyone to tremble greatly and feel suffocated. There are more great figures descending. They wouldn't be coming for a disciple of the Darchu dynasty again, right? The expressions of everyone went stiff as they stared blankly towards the distant horizon because there were two vast divine rays of light that filled the heavens and the earth whistling over from there. Swoosh! Oh, I've arrived. I was guided here by destiny. It really is a small world. A ray of divine light flashed before a monk that wore tattered monk robes, straw sandals, and held a string of extremely ordinary prayer beads made of decaying wood walked out from within it. This monk's dressing was like the vagrant monks of the mortal world that roamed about the streets to beg for alms. But his eyes were extremely clear and surged with a kind glow while divine light faintly flowed between his brows, and his entire body was clean. Even though he was clothed in rags, they didn't emanate a filthy aura, and they were instead like a lotus that stood aloof amidst a filthy world. Everyone felt extremely deep and profound wisdom when they first laid eyes on this monk. He was like a wise sage that knew everything and possessed wisdom that was as deep as the ocean. This was the first time she had seen someone from the Buddhist sect. When he looked at the monk from afar, he really noticed a strand of an unfamiliar energy that was vast, bright, and pure flowing around the monk. Obviously, it was Buddha energy. On the other hand, the expressions of the emissaries turned to shock when they saw this monk. The reason was extremely simple. Even if it was within the dark reverie, the members of the Buddhist sect hadn't emerged in the world for countless years, and the people of the world had almost forgotten the existence of the Buddhist sect. Who would have expected that they would actually encounter a member of the Buddhist sect in the primeval battlefield? Moreover, this monk's strength seemed to be extremely strong. Diana Forest Temple's monk of six senses? Why have you come, monk? Could it be that the Buddhist sect can't sit still with the impending upheaval of the three dimensions? The nearby Huang Meiwing spoke out with surprise. Since Benefactor may come here, then this little monk naturally can come as well. Coming and going is a wonder of the heavens and the earth. Why inquire to the bottom of something? Six Senses grinned. Six Senses? This Buddhist name is interesting. Named from the six senses of sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch, and thought. Comprehending the profundities of the six senses and obliterating the desires of the six senses wouldn't be the grand Tao you're pursuing for your entire lifetime, right? Heaven Trampler seemed to have thought of something, and he roared with laughter. Benefactor is really wise. Everything should be guided by fate. Why don't you return with this little monk to laud the scriptures and comprehend the profundities of Buddhism? You'll surely be able to become a Buddha soon. Six Senses turned around to grin at Heaven Trampler. Nonsense. I heard since long ago that members of the Buddhist sect are full of witty remarks and are more formidable than anyone in talking. How could I be tricked by you? Heaven Trampler glared at Six Senses as he shook his head. This baldy is really full of crap, and it's sickening. Right at this moment, another ray of light arrived swiftly, and with a flash, a man walked out from within it. His figure was extremely tall, his backbone ramrod straight, and his eyes deep and profound. The lines of his face were craggy as if it was chiseled out, causing him to be peerlessly handsome. The dense jet-black hair that covered his head fluttered in the wind, while a monstrous aura of resolute slaughter and dominating the world were emitted from between his brows. as he swept his gaze towards the surroundings. Above all things, there was a piercingly cold and pure energy that was filled with a destructive aura flowing around his body, and it developed into countless devils, Yuxia, asuras, skeletons, and other terrifying phenomena, causing him to seem like a great devil that had walked out from hell. The hearts of everyone shook once more. This is actually a great figure of the devil sect. Members of the devil sect are brutal and evil figures, yet the devilish chi he emits is so pure. I wonder how he cultivated it. She was amazed in his heart. Meanwhile, it wasn't just him. Everyone else only dared to think about it in their hearts, yet didn't dare speak out. Couldn't be helped. There were truly too many great figures present, and they were too terrifying. Heaven Trampler, Huang Meiweng, Six Senses, and the great figure of the devil sect that had just arrived. Every single one of them had their own unique characteristics, and every single one of them had strengths that stood far above everyone else. Even Bing Shirtian had no place to interrupt before them. So how could all these juniors dare open their mouths? But the situation developing to such an extent had already caused Chen Shi to completely heave a sigh of relief. He knew that he didn't have to rely on the tiny cauldron's strength to fight desperately with Bing Shirtian any longer, and it was sufficient for him to wait for a proper moment to take action. First Heaven Devil Sex Fang Zhanmei. I never expected a devil like you has come here as well. I've wanted to fight you for a few thousand years, yet never had the fortune of meeting you. Since destiny has brought us together, let's compete here. Right at this moment, Heaven Trampler roared with laughter towards the sky as his battle intent surged, and he was burning with eagerness. Fang Zhanmei. The expressions of the emissaries turned to shock once again when they heard this name, and even Bing Shirtian's pupils constricted as he revealed a wisp of deep fear. This person was the most outstanding overlord figure of the devil sect, and he'd already shaken the entire dark reverie and become famous in the world since countless years ago. But he'd gone into seclusion for an unknown reason later on and didn't make an appearance ever since. At that time, this caused an extremely great stir in the dark reverie, and everyone guessed that he'd overcome the heavenly tribulation and ascended to the immortal dimension since long ago. Never had they imagined that he would actually make a sudden appearance at this moment and appear here. Want to fight me? Go ask your master if he agrees first. Fang Zhanmei glanced at Heaven Trampler before he spoke with a carefree tone. Heaven Trampler's expression froze when his master was mentioned. He couldn't help but sigh repeatedly with an extremely helpless appearance, and he didn't have the desire to battle any longer. Little fatty, quickly come with this little monk. The group of Baldies in the Diana Forest Temple are waiting anxiously for you. On the other side, Six Senses suddenly arrived by Ling Yu's side, and he grinned as he sized Ling Yu up before he spoke. When everyone saw this, they couldn't help but think in their hearts. It really is like this. They'd been shocked to the point of becoming numbed by the numerous scenes that had occurred previously, so they seemed to be much calmer at this moment instead. Me? Ling Yu was astounded, and he scratched his head before asking with an honest expression. Senior, have you mistaken me for someone else? No matter who I identify mistakenly, I wouldn't mistake you. Six Senses seemed to be extremely patient as he spoke with a grin. Are you sure? Yes. Really? Yes. Did you really not make a mistake? I really didn't. But Little brat. Are you done? Bang. Six Senses was finally unable to endure it any longer, and he raised his hand to knock Ling Yu out before he shook his head helplessly. Oh dear, even though the disciples of the Buddhist sect are really long-winded, there really isn't another person that's as long-winded as you, little brat. What an abnormal fellow. Heaven Trampler, Huang Meiweng, and Fang Zhanmei couldn't help but roar with laughter when they saw this scene because Ling Yu was really abnormal for being able to be long-winded to the point that Six Senses couldn't take it. Chen Shi and the others smiled endlessly as well. All of them had discerned that Six Senses really had heartfelt intentions of taking Ling Yu with him and taking Ling Yu as a disciple of the Diana Forest Temple. Only Bing Shirtian still had a dark and emotionless expression because another disciple of the Darchu dynasty had been taken away by a great figure of the Buddhist sect, and this caused his mood to be even more gloomy and resentful. Next, Fang Zhanmei selected Fan Yunlan. Fan Yunlan seemed to not be surprised, and she calmly received this extremely great fortune. She wasn't surprised either because he'd heard a long time ago from that senior sister of his that loved to disguise herself as a man that Fan Yunlan was born, while accompanied by a lotus of evil. Moreover, she was from the devil sect, so being selected by Fang Zhanmei was within reason. But what surprised Shi was that Fang Zhanmei suddenly swept his gaze towards the nearby Zhao Qinghe after he selected Fan Yunlan, and he actually selected Zhao Qinghe as well. Up until this point, besides Shi and Qing Shui, all the other disciples of their Darchu dynasty had been selected by the great figures that had suddenly descended to the primeval battlefield. Not to mention Chen Shi and the others, could anyone amongst the people present have imagined that such a scene would occur? Numerous great figures tore through the sky and arrived here to recruit all the disciples of the Darchu dynasty, causing everyone present to be shocked and feel that all of this was slightly unreal. On the other hand, She had started smiling instead. Bing Shirtian wished for nothing more than to smash his fist into the bastard's face when he saw Shi's smile, but he forcefully restrained himself. There was nothing he could do about it because even if he held the decree of the immortal dimension now, it would be impossible for him to continue deterring everyone. Because any one of the great figures like Madman Lu, Heaven Trampler, Huang Meiweng, Six Senses, and Fan Zhanmei by Shi's side were capable of easily annihilating him. Under these circumstances, how could he dare act rashly? But he felt fortunate that Qing Shui had still fallen into his hands at the end, so his trip wasn't fruitless. As for Shi, there was always opportunities to kill him in the future. However, the next scene that occurred caught him off guard. Zhenlu Qing stood by Heaven Trampler's side as she said with a light voice, "Senior brother, that heavenly immortal seized away a companion of ours. I hope you can uphold justice for me." "Yes, senior. Help this companion of mine." Huang Fu Qingying and the others spoke to Huang Meiweng, Six Senses, and Fang Zhanmei that were at their sides. In the next moment, the gazes of all the great figures descended onto Bing Shirtian in unison, and their gazes either contained indifference, ferocious coldness, or a lack of emotion, but their gazes caused Bing Shirtian to feel unprecedented pressure. This sort of pressure caused him to feel his breathing become difficult, and his expression became unsightly to the extreme. Never had he imagined that these little fellows that were like ants would actually dare strike back at this moment. "Little fellow, quickly hand her over." Heaven Trampler spoke with a booming voice. "You're a heavenly immortal's external avatar, yet you actually carried out such a deed that's beneath your dignity. Truly disappointing." Huang Meiweng still had a sullen expression as he spoke. "Karma goes around in circles, and retribution is never pleasant. Benefactor, listen to this little monk and quickly let that little girl go." Six Senses shook his head as he spoke. "Let her go." Fang Zhanmei was the most direct, and he directly spat out 3 words with a voice that carried the densest aura of slaughter, and it seemed as if he intended to kill Bing Shirtian if he disobeyed. When they saw these 4 great figures successively directing the tips of their spears at Bing Shirtian, the pressure from this even caused the nearby experts of the various dynasties and the emissaries of the Dark Reverie to be terrified to the point of almost suffocating. On the other hand, the strength of the pressure that the concerned party, Bing Shirtian, faced was obvious. His expression was gloomy, his teeth gritted tightly, and the rage and aggrieved feelings in his heart burned like flames that scorched and caused piercing pain to him. He truly regretted being unable to annihilate Chen Shi earlier, because if he'd done this earlier, then so many unexpected changes in the situation wouldn't have occurred. Unfortunately, he knew that everything was too late. However, it was absolutely impossible to make him hand over Qing Shui just like this. She was the only woman he truly loved since he was young, and it was with great difficulty that he was finally reunited with her. So how could he be willing to let go so easily? But if he didn't let go, then how would he face these abnormally formidable fellows? At this moment, Bing Shirtian was struggling intensely in his heart, and his expression changed indeterminately because he actually didn't know what to do. There would absolutely be no one that would believe that a heavenly immortal that held the decree of the immortal dimension could be pressured to such an extremely hard-pressed extent. But it had really occurred now, and the visual impact created from this caused everyone in the surroundings to even start to feel slight pity for Bing Shirtian. If only you knew that this would happen, then perhaps you wouldn't have acted in this way. Actually, there'd been some people that felt dissatisfied with Bing Shirtian instructing the emissaries of the Dark Reverie to suppress Xianxia and the others since the beginning. After all, Xianxia had saved everyone yesterday, and Bing Shirtian's actions of not trying to repay Xianxia but punish Xianxia and the others instead was something that many people couldn't bear the sight of. Now when they saw Bing Shirtian fall to such a situation, many people were extremely delighted in their hearts, but they just didn't reveal it on their faces. After all, they weren't Xianxia, and Bing Shirtian was still an unshakable mountain to them. So they could only revere him and not dare be disrespectful in the slightest. Fellow Taoists, please allow me to say something. Right at this moment, Yun Lanxing suddenly took a step forward and took a deep breath before he said, "This young woman is a reincarnated heavenly immortal, and she was the senior sister of me and senior brother Bing in her previous lifetime. We're bringing her with us this time because it's the order of the sect master and various elders of my Heavenflow Dao sect, and we absolutely wouldn't dare to harm her." Heaven Trampler and the others were slightly shocked when they heard this. Right, Miss Qing's identity in her previous lifetime was indeed that of a Heavenflow Dao sect disciple, but she'd already indicated earlier that she would absolutely not leave with all of you. However, you used forceful methods on her with the intention of taking her with you. How do you explain this? She spoke with a clear voice. So that's how it is. Heaven Trampler and the others finally came to an understanding, and they successively shot hostile gazes at Bing Shirtian and Yun Lanxing once again because forcing others against their will was a bit too despicable. Yun Lanxing laughed bitterly and hurriedly explained, "Fellow Taoists, there's something all of you are unaware of. This senior sister Qing of mine has experienced 100 reincarnations and a myriad of difficulties. If she doesn't return to the Heavenflow Dao sect, then her path towards the Grand Dao in this lifetime would probably be destroyed overnight and be a step short of completion. So we had no choice but to carry out this terrible move. Reincarnation of 100 lifetimes." A wisp of cold light flashed past the eyes of Heaven Trampler and the others when they heard these words, and they said, "This woman wouldn't be Qing Xiui, right?" Xi's heart jerked. Never had he imagined that, with the status of Heaven Trampler and the others, they would actually know of Qing Xiui's existence. This caused him to simply not dare imagine exactly what sort of height Qing Xiui had attained in her previous lifetime. Why did she receive the attention of so many people? She's precisely my senior sister. Yun Lanxing heaved a sigh of relief. He saw a trace of hope to change the situation from the reactions of Heaven Trampler and the others, and he hurriedly struck while the iron was still hot. "Fellow Taoists, I presume all of you know clearly how great the risk she took to experience 100 reincarnations, and it could be said to have a very slim chance of survival. Moreover, Senior Sister Qing left behind all her past karma in the Heavenflow Dao sect, so if she's unable to reclaim and destroy this past karma, then her entire life would be bound to be destroyed. These words are reasonable. As a cultivator, which one of us doesn't carry a body full of past karma on their way to ascend into the heavens? If one doesn't possess it, then one is unable to seek the Tao, and if one doesn't abandon it, it's impossible to become an immortal." Huang Meiwing sighed emotionally with a light voice. "Oh, so in this way, this Qing Xiui really has to be taken back by all of you," said Heaven Trampler. "Exactly. Don't worry, fellow Taoist. A figure like Senior Sister Qing is extremely important to my Heavenflow Dao sect, and we absolutely wouldn't dare treat her shabbily," said Yun Lanxing. "Senior Sister, what do you think?" Heaven Trampler looked at Zhen Luqing. Zhen Luqing puckered her lips, yet her gaze looked at Xianxia instead. Meanwhile, it wasn't just Heaven Trampler. Even the nearby Huang Meiwing, Six Senses, and Feng Zhanmei noticed that she seemed to be the leading figure amongst these juniors. This discovery caused them to feel slightly surprised. After all, they knew how extraordinary the disciples they chose were, yet now all of them were obediently listening to a single person. How could they not be curious about this discovery? Their gazes briefly sized Xianxia up and seemed to have noticed something, causing a wisp of shock to be flash on their faces, and then they quickly recovered their calm. However, Great waves had arisen within their hearts. His fate is concealed by the workings of the heavens. Exactly what great figure is actually capable of utilizing the workings of the heavens and completely concealing the fate of this kid? Even though they were surprised in their hearts, they didn't ask. Once one arrived at their level, it was fine just knowing something, yet once one inquired about it, one might be tainted by some sort of karma, and it was difficult to guess if it would turn out to be fortune or calamity. She didn't notice all this as his heart was thrown into chaos by what Yun Lansheng had said. Only now did he understand that it seemed that no matter what happened, Qing Shui had to return to the Heavenflow Dao sect. Otherwise, everything she did during these 100 reincarnations would come to naught. This was something he was absolutely unwilling to see happen. However, when he glanced at the distant Bing Shirtian, he was extremely unwilling in his heart to allow Qing Shui to return to the Heavenflow Dao sect just like this. What should I do? She fell into a long period of deep contemplation. Meanwhile, the gazes of practically everyone had descended onto Chun Shi, and this included Bing Shirtian. The atmosphere seemed to be silent, perfectly silent. It felt as if Chun Shi ruled over everything present here, and a single decision of his would cause everything to undergo different changes. Of course, this was merely a feeling. After all is said and done, Chun Shi was still relying on the might of Heaven Trampler and the others to attain such an effect, and it wasn't the materialization of his own strength and will. In the end, Chun Shi raised his head slowly, and he stared at Bing Shirtian with a calm gaze as he said, "All right, I'll allow you to take her with you." A single sentence, a few words, yet they seemed extremely heavy. At the instant he spoke these words, it caused Chun Shi to feel as if all the strength in his entire body was completely sucked out. He did indeed care extremely about Qing Shui and wished for nothing more than to seize her back from Yun Lansheng's hands right now. But for the sake of her future, her path to the Grand Tao, and her everything, Chun Shi could only do this. He didn't feel that he was very noble, and he only firmly and wholeheartedly felt that only by making this decision would he never feel regret. Yun Lansheng and Bing Shirtian heaved a sigh of relief. At this moment, everyone present heaved a sigh of relief in their hearts, and it seemed as if this answer of Chun Shi's was similarly what they were willing to see in their hearts. Only Zhen Luqing and the others understood exactly how much unwillingness and pain Chun Shi felt in his heart when making this decision. "All right, since you've made this decision, then I'm not afraid to tell you that the entire Heavenflow Dao sect will hold a ceremony for me and Senior Sister Qing 100 years from now, and will officially be made Dao companions." Bing Shirtian spoke out abruptly as he stared at Chun Shi with a calm gaze, and he said slowly, "This agreement was already set by the seniors of the sect a long time ago before Senior Sister Qing reincarnated herself, and it would be held once Senior Sister Qing completed her 100 reincarnations." These words seemed to be so sudden, like a thunderclap that suddenly resounded beneath a clear and cloudless sky, and it caused everyone to be astounded. On the other hand, Chun Shi's entire body was shocked stiff by these words since a long time ago, and a tempestuous storm had arisen in his heart. 100 years from now, a ceremony would be held, and she will become Dao companions with Bing Shirtian? A single sentence shocked everyone to the extreme. Chun Shi had just agreed to allow Yun Lansheng to take Qing Shui back to the Heavenflow Dao sect, and in the next moment Bing Shirtian had spoke such words. This was absolutely revenge towards Chun Shi that was schemed long ago. "He's going too far. You're simply sinister and despicable to the extreme." Huang Fu Qingying cried out furiously with a sharp voice. "Heavenly Immortal? Tui!" Young Master Zhou was utterly disgusted, and he was angered to the point his entire body started trembling. The others revealed furious expressions as well, because they simply didn't dare believe that these were the actions of a heavenly immortal. I've said it clearly at the beginning. This agreement was made long ago before Senior Sister Qing experienced her 100 reincarnations, and it was the decision of the seniors of my Heavenflow Dao sect. At that time, Senior Sister Qing had already agreed to this as well. Bing Shirtian's expression was calm as he spoke indifferently. At this moment, he'd once again recovered the dignified bearing of a heavenly immortal, and it caused Huang Fu Qingying and the others to feel a wave of fury. It's really as the saying goes, if one doesn't kill the snake then one will be harmed by it in the future. What's senior brother Bing said? Yun Lanqing laughed bitterly as he glanced at Bing Shirtian before he braced himself and said, "It's really the truth. I can bear witness to this matter, and the seniors of my Heavenflow Dao sect can bear witness to it as well. How can everyone be completely convinced by just the words of the two of you?" Zhenluqing took a deep breath before she spoke out slowly. "I can swear by the heavens," said Bing Shirtian indifferently. As soon as these words were spoken, it instantly caused Zhenluqing and the others to be speechless. Cultivators revered the heaven Dao the most, causing oaths to be like inner demons, so no one dared to joke around with oaths. Thus, Bing Shirtian saying this had undoubtedly proved that all of this was true. Junior sister, senior brother can't interfere in this matter. It's something that Qing Shui herself agreed to, and it can't be changed. Heaven Trampler sighed lightly. Indeed, let he who tied the bell on the tiger remove it. This matter stemmed from Qing Shui and should be dealt with by her. Huang Meiweng, Six Senses, and Fan Zhanmei nodded in succession. They were indeed incapable of interfering in this matter. The Heavenflow Dao sect was one of the 10 immortal sects of the Dark Reverie at any rate, and its hidden resources and reserves were so formidable that it wasn't the slightest bit inferior to the sects that stood behind them. If they forcefully interfered in this matter, it would cause an extremely great dispute instead. Bing Shirtian is really ruthless. With a few words, he turned around the declining situation from before, and Chen Shi is probably powerless to save the situation now. The experts of the various dynasties and the emissaries of the Dark Reverie at the side sighed endlessly with emotion in their hearts. It was at this moment that Chen Shi suddenly took a step forward, and his gaze looked directly at Bing Shirtian as he said calmly, "You love Miss Qing extremely?" It was an extremely sudden question, yet Bing Shirtian didn't hesitate in the slightest to answer. "Yes. Then do you dare to make a bet with me?" Chen Shi continued. His gaze was calm like the snow while his voice didn't even tremble in the slightest, and it was as if he was speaking of something that couldn't be any more ordinary. "Let's hear it." Bing Shirtian felt slightly uncomfortable from being stared at by Chen Shi, but he still forcefully endured it and spoke out. "I bet that 100 years from now, Miss Qing will absolutely not marry you." Chen Shi's voice was extremely calm yet contained an extremely strong confidence, and his confidence came from his trust and understanding of Qing Shui. He knew that if it was her here at this moment, she would surely act in this way for him. "Oh? What if you lose?" Bing Shirtian felt even more uncomfortable in his heart, and he spoke with a frown. It was extremely difficult for him to understand where an ant from a small world got such strong confidence from. "If I lose," Chen Shi muttered and suddenly pointed towards the sky, and he swore with the heavens as his witness. "In front of the heaven Dao, I, Chen Shi, swear here that if Miss Qing willingly marries another person, then I, Chen Shi, will cripple my own cultivation right away, and I'll perish for eternity. If I go against this oath, then may I be destroyed by the world and condemned by both men and God." Heaven Trampler and the others were slightly stunned when they saw Chen Shi suddenly make such a vicious oath. Everyone else in the surroundings were first stunned, and then they started whispering in discussion. "This fellow is too rash. Qing Shui is a disciple of the Heavenflow Dao sect at any rate. Once she awakens the memories of her previous lifetime, then she'll probably forget him completely. Love really brings harm. Could it be that he isn't worried that along with the passage of time, Qing Shui would gradually love another? After all, Bing Shirtian is currently a heavenly immortal, so how could Bing Shirtian's charm be something that he can compare to? I really don't know where this fellow got such great confidence. Could it be that he doesn't know that he's betting with his life?" Huang Fuqingying, Zhenluqing, and the others were slightly stunned, and then they came to an understanding. They were extremely confident of Chen Shi because they knew that Qing Shui had given birth to a child for Chen Shi, and merely this fact was sufficient to prove everything. Unfortunately, only Fan Yunlan knew that the birth of that child was actually an accident. But no matter what, she still firmly believed that since Chen Shi dared speak these words, he surely had a reason. Bing Shirtian's pupils constricted slightly when he heard Chen Shi make such a vicious oath, and then he said coldly, "Your courage is worthy of compliment. I hope you don't regret it when the day comes. Xianxi's expression remained unchanged as he said calmly, how about if I win this bet? Win? How could you possibly win? Bing Shirtian was stunned, and he seemed as if he'd heard a humongous joke. What? You don't dare to take the bet? Said Xianxi. Bing Shirtian's face sank, and his gaze flickered indeterminately before he said coldly after a long time, all right, since you're looking for death, then I'll fulfill your wish. I'll agree to this bet. If you win, then I, Bing Shirtian, will cripple my own cultivation and be reduced to a mortal that's at your mercy. Only in this moment have you made a display that was like a true immortal. Xianxi said calmly, 100 years from now, I'll head over to the Heaven Flow Dao sect. At that time, there'll naturally be a winner to this bet. But I have to remind you that if Miss Qing isn't marrying you willingly, then I'll allow you to understand how living can be a worse fate than death. Everyone was shocked as soon as these words were spoken, and they didn't dare believe that Xianxi actually dared to threaten a heavenly immortal. How many people in this world dare to do this? Very good. Bing Shirtian's expression was calm, yet he was already furious to the extreme in his heart, and his voice seemed as if it was squeezed out from the cracks between his teeth. You're the first person that dared to speak like this to me. I'll remember this. As soon as he finished speaking, Bing Shirtian flicked his sleeve to directly and forcefully cut open a passageway in space, and then he walked over. Junior brother Yun, fellow emissaries, it's time for us to leave. Yun Lanxing glanced at Xianxi and couldn't help but sigh before following right behind Bing Shirtian. The other emissaries of the Dark Reverie didn't dare continue staying here when they saw this, and all of them brought along the disciples of the various dynasties they'd selected and followed closely behind Yun Lanxing to move towards the passageway. When they left, Su Qingyan, Shui Ranshan, Ling Zhe, and the others nodded to Chen Shi and sent voice transmissions with words like, "See you in the Dark Reverie." Chen Shi replied to all of them one by one, and he seemed to be rather calm and hadn't lost his head from what had happened. Only Feng Jianbai and Shang Ke bluntly revealed a wisp of killing intent towards Chen Shi when they left. Chen Shi noticed it, yet didn't say anything. He didn't take these two fellows seriously any longer because his current target had been locked onto Bing Shirtian long ago. In next to no time, the disciples of the various dynasties and the emissaries of the Dark Reverie had entered the spatial passageway under Bing Shirtian's lead and vanished. The area before the War Soul tablet had completely recovered its calm. The setting sun glowed red like blood as it emanated the glow of dusk, and when it descended onto the surface of the stone tablet, a golden light surged upon it as the names of the experts of the various dynasties were reflected upon it. But in next to no time, more than half of these names had vanished, and it also meant that these people had already left the primeval battlefield. Once Chen Shi and the others left, this stone tablet that witnessed the rise of countless experts would once again fall into silence. Perhaps there would be another batch of young disciples that would enter here in another 100 years. This was the principle of the circulation of the world. Everything was moving forward while stopping meant falling behind in death. Under the setting sun, Chen Shi strolled by himself within the empty primeval city, and his tall figure drew out a long shadow on the ground. A single and solitary shadow. Zhen Luqing had left. When she left, a red string was tied on his right wrist, and she didn't say anything else because she knew that he understood her feelings. Huangfu Qingying and young Master Zhou had left as well. Huangfu Qingying cried like a weeping beauty, like a little lady that didn't know anything, whereas young Master Zhou struck Chen Shi fiercely on his shoulder and said, "Best brothers for life." Ling Yu laughed with a silly expression on his face when he left, and he revealed a mouthful of snow-white teeth. Moreover, he extremely optimistically invited Chen Shi to pay a visit to the Diana Forest Temple when Chen Shi was free. Zhao Qinghe only silently stared at Chen Shi for a while and didn't say a single word, just like his cold character. But Chen Shi understood that if he was in trouble, then Zhao Qinghe wouldn't hesitate to lay down his life just like he'd done before. Only Fan Yunlan hugged Chen Shi tightly and muttered for a long time, as if she wanted to finish speaking everything she could say for her entire lifetime. When she left, she suddenly turned around and glanced back at him while smiling sweetly, and her beautiful and magnificent smile caused the setting sun to be cast into shade. She seemed as if she wanted to make she eternally remember her most beautiful side that she revealed at this moment. After that, only she himself and Madman Lu remained. He didn't leave impatiently, but started strolling through the streets by himself, and he seemed as if he was reluctant to leave and was bidding farewell to everything that had occurred in this expanse of the heavens and the earth. In the end, he returned to his residence, and he smiled as he looked at Madman Lu, who leaned on a willow tree while drinking wine. "Senior, let's go. Aren't you going to stay for a while longer?" "No. The past will also pass by in the end, whereas the dark reverie is my new beginning." Xianxia's gaze was firm, and it was tainted with a wisp of resplendent color from the rays of the setting sun, causing his eyes to seem dreamlike. "Then let's set out." Madman Lu roared with laughter before he drank the last drop of wine in the jug and stood up, and then he tore open the space before him. "Kid, that was well said. The dark reverie is boundless, with a myriad of clans and experts that are numerous like the trees in a forest. It's the place that's the closest to the immortal dimension, and that place is the true stage that belongs to you." Swoosh! The spatial passageway flashed, and this expanse of the heavens and the earth returned to calm once again. The setting sun glowed in the sky, withered grass was scattered everywhere, and the ancient primeval city that was accustomed to time and age still stood there with an awe-inspiring aura, whereas the last wisp of golden light on the Warsoul tablet gradually vanished. Xianxia's name was once branded there. Darchu Dynasty, Silken City. As the capital, Silken City was still as prosperous and flourishing as before, while countless experts converged here from all over, causing it to be crowded with people, pouring with sweat, extremely bustling and clamorous. The capital was extremely large and possessed a grand, imposing aura, whereas the streets within the city stretched out both horizontally and vertically. They were spacious, perfectly straight, led to all directions, and were sufficient for numerous treasured carriages to move side by side on them. Ferocious beasts roared and howled frequently on the streets while pulling rumbling treasured carriages that possessed extraordinary auras past. Everyone had become accustomed to all of this long ago. Flying was prohibited within Silken City, so when the members of nobility or some experts with respected identities moved about, they would surely clear the way with treasured carriages that were suffused with spirit energy, flowed with multicolored lights, and were gorgeous to the extreme. It was even to the extent that a great deal of discussion arose because of this. For example, whose treasure carriage had a better style or whose treasure carriage had mightier ferocious beasts, and it had become the topic that everyone took delight in talking about. On this day, the city seemed to be exceptionally bustling. Numerous treasured carriages that were extremely luxurious frequently rumbled as they passed by swiftly on the spacious streets while headed towards Silken Palace, and they shocked all the pedestrians to the point of evading successively from their fear of offending these people. "Looks, that's the golden war chariot of the warlord's estate. It wouldn't be the warlord who's sitting within it, right? My God! The treasure carriages of all the 4 great estates of kings have set out. Has some major event occurred? Wait, all of you, look. The treasures carriages over there aren't only from Silken City, and there are also treasures carriages from the northern barbaric lands, Eastern Sea, and Southern Territory. All the great figures of the Darchu dynasty wouldn't have gathered here, right? All these treasured carriages are rarely seen normally. Now all of them are being driven towards Silken Palace instead. So a major event has surely occurred." The people on the streets were in an uproar as they discussed animatedly, and they were curious in their hearts. Exactly what sort of major event has occurred to actually cause so many great figures to rush impatiently to Silken Palace? Silken Palace. Many people had already converged within the extremely vast hall. On the left side was row after row of black armored warriors, whereas on the right side was row after row of officials in luxurious robes, and all of them stood solemnly. At the frontmost position were 2 middle-aged men. One wore black armor and had a chilly and indifferent expression, whereas the other wore scholarly robes and possessed a refined and cultured bearing. They were precisely the martial Marquis Luohun and the civil Marquis Jiang Chong. Further beneath them stood some of the kinsmen of the emperor, like the wise King Huangfu Jingtian, the warlord Huangfu Taiwu, the governing King Huangfu Tailai, and the just King Huangfu Zhenghong. Further behind were the earthly immortal realm experts that came from all over the Darchu dynasty. Shockingly, Taoist Long He, Chongsu the Unfettered, Zhao Zime, Emolanhai, Lord Lu Xiao, and the other earthly immortal realm experts from the Central Plains, Northern Barbaric Lands, and Eastern Sea were amongst them. The earthly immortal realm experts that represented the Southern Territory still consisted of only Bei Heng himself. When looked at from afar, an entire few tens of earthly immortal realm experts and a few hundreds of officials, warriors, and kinsmen of the emperor that formed the core force of the Darchu dynasty had gathered within the hall, and this was absolutely a number that was sufficient to cause anyone to be terrified. Yet at this moment, the gazes of everyone in the hall was looking towards the central throne with 9 dragons carved on it. A mighty figure sat upright there. His jet black hair was hung loosely behind his back. His face was simple and handsome, and his eyes contained boundlessly vast and majestic scenes like lightning flashing, while the sun and moon alternated within, causing him to reveal a peerlessly mighty aura. But at this moment, there was a dazed expression on his extremely dignified face, and he was staring blankly and silently for a long time. "Your Majesty." As one of the right arms of Emperor Chu, the civil Marquis Jiang Hong could only remind the emperor in a light voice when he saw Emperor Chu in such a state. Actually, up until now, he was still completely bewildered and didn't understand why Emperor Chu, who was in closed-door cultivation, would suddenly make an appearance before directly issue a command to the world, and he commanded all the officials and warriors of the palace, his kinsmen, and the earthly immortal realm experts from all over to gather here. After all, during all these years, such a command would only be issued in the Darchu dynasty when the all-star meeting was held, and the emperor would utterly not mobilize so many people normally. Could it be that some sort of major and unexpected change has occurred in the cultivation world of the Darchu dynasty? The expressions of everyone in the hall went grim when they thought of this. Has a major event occurred? It wouldn't be the Blood Crescent Devil sect that's about to make a comeback, right? Being reminded by the civil marquis caused Emperor Chu to instantly recover from his dazed state, and his gaze slowly swept everyone in the surroundings. The expressions of everyone turned solemn as they held their breaths in concentration, and the atmosphere seemed to be perfectly silent. "Ha ha!" A wisp of a smile suddenly suffused the corners of Emperor Chu's mouth. Then his laughter grew louder and louder to the point it was like thunderclaps that descended from the 9 heavens, and it rumbled and shook the entire hall both inside and out. Extreme happiness, joy, and heroic spirit were revealed within this sound of laughter. Everyone in the hall was stunned. Could it be that it isn't some sort of unexpected event that has occurred, and it's instead some sort of major and joyous event? But no matter what, Emperor Chu's laughter had influenced everyone, causing them to heave a sigh of relief in their hearts. This at least indicates that nothing bad has occurred. Emperor Chu's laughter stopped before long, and his gaze was profound as he said with a prideful expression, "Everyone, I called all of you here this time because I have an extremely joyous event to announce. I want to hold a grand celebration in the entire dynasty for 100 days. Ha!" The hearts of everyone in the hall shook, and they were slightly astounded. Hold a grand celebration in the entire dynasty for 100 days? Exactly what sort of joyous event could actually cause His Majesty to make such a bold decision? After all, a grand celebration of such a level was unprecedented in the history of the Darchu dynasty. The test of the primeval battlefield has ended. Emperor Chu spoke with a light voice, and there was still a trace of shock and admiration left within his eyes. Everyone in the hall was first shocked, and then they recovered from their shock and cried out involuntarily with pleasant surprise. Could it be that some disciples of our Darchu dynasty have entered the dark reverie successfully? Emperor Chu nodded with a smile. Swoosh! The atmosphere in the entire hall exploded as exclaims of admiration and bustling noise rose and fell. With their status, they naturally knew how difficult it was to smoothly enter the dark reverie as a disciple from an ordinary dynasty, and it could be said to be almost impossible. Even though a batch of disciples from the Darchu dynasty would enter the primeval battlefield every 100 years, yet their results weren't promising. Especially in the recent 1,000 years, practically all the disciples of the Darchu dynasty that entered the primeval dynasty would be annihilated, and it was a depressing outcome. Now, there was actually someone amongst the disciples of the Darchu dynasty this year that had entered the dark reverie successfully, so it was obvious how shocked and delighted all of them were. "Your Majesty, was it Xianxia?" The civil marquis took a deep breath before he asked. He joined one of the top 10 immortal sects of the dark reverie, the 9 Radiant Sword sect. Emperor Chu nodded as he spoke slowly, and his voice directly and completely suppressed the clamorous noise in the entire hall. One of the top 10 immortal sects, the 9 Radiant Sword sect? Everyone was shocked in their hearts as they gasped. Such a sect was too far away for them, but most shocking to them was that not only had Xianxia smoothly entered the dark reverie, he'd actually been selected by one of the top 10 immortal sects of the dark reverie. On the Martial Emperor's Warsoul tablet, his strength and potential surpassed the disciples of those top dynasties and prestigious clans of the ancient kingdoms, and he ascended to the position of first place to stand above all. Emperor Chu's voice that seemed like mutters sounded out slowly. First place. The hall was instantly completely silent as everyone was shocked to the point of speechlessness. The first place on the Martial Emperor's Warsoul tablet? Suppressed all the disciples of the top dynasties and prestigious clans? This supreme honor is something no one in the history of the Darchu dynasty has attained. Bei Heng was stunned as well, because he'd never imagined that this sworn brother of his would actually be ferocious to such an extent. It caused him to be extremely dazed, and it was so unreal as if he was listening to a legendary saga. It isn't just Xianxia. Qing Shui was selected by the Heavenflow Dao sect. Zhen Luqing was selected by the great sage Heaven Trampler. That youngest daughter of mine and young Master Zhou were selected by the saintly land of Ascension. Emperor Chu spoke once more. His voice was calm and slow. Every name and sect he spoke was like a thunderclap that blasted the hearts of these earthly immortal realm experts to the point of trembling endlessly, and they couldn't maintain their usual composure any longer. Bang! 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 Within the hall, the wine cups on the tables were shattered into powder one after the other as figure after figure was sprayed wet by wine and fell into an embarrassing state. However, they were completely unaware of this, as they'd already been muddled by their shock. The great sage Heaven Trampler from the unknown lands, Huang Meiweng from the saintly land of Ascension, the monk Six Senses from the Diana Forest Temple, Fang Zhanmei from the First Heaven Devil sect. All these names that shook the dark reverie and sects that stood towering at the peak of the dark reverie had actually completely recruited all the disciples of their Darchu dynasty. The breathing of everyone became heavy, their expressions stiffened, and they were extremely dazed. Some were even excited to the point their entire bodies started trembling. It was too unexpected. It was too shocking. Could any of them have imagined that such an extremely great fortune would fall to the Darchu dynasty? After an unknown period of time, everyone seemed as if they'd awoken from their dreams and gradually recovered from their shock. But their hearts were still coiled with excitement that couldn't be shaken off in a short period of time. At this moment, they finally understood why Emperor Chu wanted to hold a grand celebration in the entire dynasty for 100 days. Unfortunately, with Xianxia's natural talent, he entered the 9 Radiant Sword sect instead. Even though it's one of the top 10 immortal sects, it's slightly mediocre when compared to the sects the other disciples have entered. It was at this moment that the wise king sighed. The expressions of everyone became strange when they heard this. All of them knew that the wise king hated Xianxia to the bone, and these words of his seemed like he was feeling pity for Xianxia, but didn't it contain an intent to ridicule within it? Emperor Chu swept the wise king with his gaze, and he shook his head and said, "You're wrong, wise king. The hidden resources and reserves of the top 10 immortal sects are absolutely not as simple as you imagine. Not to mention the strength of a sect can't decide the length of a person's path on the path to the Grand Tao. If one doesn't work hard, then even if he's sent into the immortal dimension, he'll only be trash." When he spoke up to hear, a wish of emotion suffused Emperor Chu's eyes, and he said with a light voice, "Besides that, not to mention all of you, even I have never truly understood exactly how great Xianxia's potential is." Everyone went silent. Right, Xianxia came from a remote place in the southern territory. His path was covered in thorns, yet he moved forward courageously all along the way, and how many miracles have occurred around him. Probably no one is able to count them all. Imperial brother, what about that child of mine? Which power was he chosen by? After he heard the names of Xianxia and the others yet didn't hear any news of his own child. The wise king hesitated for a long time yet was unable to endure the curiosity in his heart, causing him to inquire this. Everyone was stunned and remembered. Right, Huangfu Changtian's name was really not amongst the names His Majesty spoke of. It's even to the extent that Yu Shenshin and Lu Zhao's names weren't mentioned as well. Emperor Chu's gaze shot swiftly towards the wise king, and his voice revealed a wisp of indifference and killing intent. Dead? Dead? The wise king seemed as if he was struck by lightning, and his mind droned as he muttered with a trembling voice. Dead? Changtian is dead as well. How could this be possible? All the earthly immortal realm experts in the hall were silent and sighed endlessly. The other disciples have all entered the dark reverie successfully, yet it just happens that the wise king's son perished in the primeval battlefield. Such a blow is a bit too great indeed. Impossible! My son's natural talent is great, and his strength is extremely formidable, since Xianxia and the others were capable of entering the dark reverie. Then on what basis was he unable to do so? Impossible. It's surely impossible. The painful loss of his beloved son caused the wise king's mind to be in chaos, and he roared hysterically. Enough! Emperor Chu shouted loudly with a deep voice. The one that caused his death was he himself. He colluded with outsiders to harm his companions. Such an unfilial son deserves death. His voice was like a thunderclap that caused everyone in the hall to be horrified. Never had they expected that the son of the wise king would actually commit such a treacherous deed. The wise king was astounded, and he simply didn't dare believe his ears. Emperor Chu said indifferently, "From today onward, just stay earnestly at your home in closed-door cultivation. If you dare take a step out of Silken City, then don't blame me for personally crippling you." As soon as he finished speaking, Emperor Chu ordered the Marshal Marquis to take the wise king, who'd fallen into an insane state, out of the hall. There's still one more thing that I have to remind everyone here today. Emperor Chu stood up slowly from his throne while his gaze that was like bolts of lightning looked down at everyone in the hall, and his low voice carried an unquestionable feeling. From today onward, anyone who dares to offend the Chun clan within the borders of the Darchu dynasty will be killed without question. As soon as he finished speaking, a peerlessly murderous killing intent swept the entire hall like a storm and filled every inch of space within it, and it shocked everyone present to the point their expressions went pale successively and caused them to feel suffocated. Instantly, the hall seemed as if it had fallen into the dead of winter, and it was utterly silent and filled with bone-piercing coldness. At this moment, as they gazed at Emperor Chu's mighty figure that stood proudly with his hands behind his back and the resolute killing intent on his face, even if it was Taoist Long He, Zhao Zime, Mo Lan Hai, and the others that hated Xianxia in their hearts, all of them shut up obediently and cast away all the thoughts in their hearts. They knew extremely clearly that from today onward, the Chun clan would become an existence that couldn't be offended at all in the Southern Territory and even the entire Darchu dynasty. Because the Southern Territory's Chun clan had Xianxia. On this day, Emperor Chu announced to the world that the entire dynasty would hold a grand celebration for 100 days. At the same time, the news related to the primeval battlefield swept through the entire Darchu dynasty in a short period of time like a storm, and every single place in the entire dynasty was shocked by this news. All the cultivators that had some knowledge of the tests in the primeval battlefield were shocked to the limit by this news, and then they seethed with excitement and cheered. Because they knew that this was an honor that belonged to Xianxia and the others, it was an honor that belonged to the Darchu dynasty, and it was an honor that belonged to every single cultivator of the Darchu dynasty. They were even able to imagine that when these disciples of the Darchu dynasty steadied their footing in the dark reverie, they would surely bring unimaginable benefits to the cultivation world of the Darchu dynasty. They felt extreme respect, heartfelt admiration, yet not the slightest bit of envy, because the height Xianxia and the others had attained was truly too far away from them, and it caused them to be utterly unable to arouse envy. Wasn't there a saying that said if one was slightly stronger than another, one would suffer the jealousy of others? If one was much stronger than another, it would draw the envy of others. But if one left another extremely far behind, it would draw the admiration of others. Southern Territory, Pine Mist City. Presently, the Pine Mist City had long since become the hottest place in the Southern Territory and even the entire Darchu dynasty. The reputation of the Chen clan had already attained an unprecedented height, and it was in a period of great prosperity and magnificence. During these past few days, the entrance of the Chen clan was ever crowded with visitors, and it was completely surrounded to the point even a drop of water couldn't pass through. The cultivators from all over used all kinds of excuses to come congratulate the Chen clan, and the scene before the entrance could simply be described as if a whole town was there. Presently, the Chen clan occupied an extremely large area, and it possessed an army of 8,000, while its elite forces were spread all over the Southern Territory. Moreover, with the great support of the Wandering Cloud Sword sect, its scale was so great that it already seemed to have become one of the top powers in the Southern Territory. However, when facing the countless cultivators and powers that came to offer congratulations from all over, the servants were still insufficient. It couldn't be helped. There were truly too many people that had come to offer congratulations, and even all the inns and restaurants in Pine Mist City were crowded long ago. At the rear of the Chen clan, within the ancestral shrine, candlelight flickered while the memorial tablets of the ancestors of the Chen clan that had already perished were placed there. Chen Hao knelt on a meditation cushion. At this moment, his face that gradually became more dignified and firm as the days went by revealed a rare wisp of excitement and sorrow, and he was muttering lightly. He was telling his grandfather who was in the netherworld about Chen Shi. He knew that his grandfather would surely be able to hear it. So he spoke in extreme detail and with extreme patience like a long-winded woman. And if an outsider were to see this scene, the person's jaw would surely be shocked off. After all, the current Chen Hao was extremely impressive and dignified. He was in charge of the lives of a few tens of thousands of people, and a single order of his could cause the entire Southern Territory to fall into an upheaval. He was an iron-handed figure that was famous in the Southern Territory. "You've already stayed here for 3 days. Aren't you going to see our guests?" As the sound of footsteps resounded out from behind him, Fei Lengzue had a pained expression as she walked over and spoke in a gentle voice. "There's no need." Chen Hao took a deep breath before he stood up, and he'd already recovered his previous dignified appearance. His forehead was wide and his appearance was handsome. According to what his grandfather, Chen Tianli, said, Chen Hao's appearance was slightly alike to his father, whereas Chen Shi was more alike to his mother. "Where are Yuer and Aner?" Chen Hao held Fei Lengzue's hand as he walked out of the memorial hall. "On the isle at the center of the lake," said Fei Lengzue with a light smile. "Oh, they've gone to cultivate again? After those 2 little fellows found out that Big Brother has entered the dark reverie. They've been unwilling to return home." Chen Hao couldn't help but laugh, and his eyes were suffused with a wisp of a doting expression. "Painstaking cultivation is the best. Presently, our Chen clan is prospering with each passing day, and I was worried that Yuer and Aner would develop arrogance and overbearingness. So it couldn't be any better that they know how to work hard and cultivate. In this way, Big Brother will surely not be disappointed when he returns and sees Aner," said Fei Lengzue with a smile. "Yeah, if it wasn't for him cultivating painstakingly, how could my big brother have possibly been able to attain his current accomplishments?" Chen Hao sighed with emotion, and his expression was slightly absent-minded as he'd recalled many things from the past. Big Brother surely endured numerous hardships in the primeval battlefield, and our Chen clan having its current accomplishments are tied to Big Brother's contribution. So, Brother Hao, you must work hard to protect this clan for Big Brother. Fei Lengzue stared at Chen Hao as she spoke with a light voice. "I will." Chen Hao grabbed Fei Lengzue's hand tightly as he looked towards the distant horizon and muttered, "Big Brother, be at ease and do what you must do. No one can shake the Chen clan in the slightest with me here." The isle at the center of the lake. Before the dark green lakeside were 2 young children fighting each other. Their moves were swift, fierce, and terrifying, and every single move they made actually caused space to be shaken to the point of crackling while sand and stone flew about. It was Chen Yu and Chen En. The two little fellows had grown a length taller, and even though their appearances seemed immature, yet there was already a trace of exuberant heroic spirit between their brows, causing them to have imposing appearances. The newborn calves already possessed the might to swallow tigers. Jiyu lay cozily on his rocking chair while his eyes that had experienced the vicissitudes of life stared at the two little fellows, and the corners of his mouth held a trace of a smile. The two little fellows were extremely intelligent, and their natural talents were very good as well. What was rare was that they were able to cultivate painstakingly and untiringly with persistence, and this quality was far more important than natural talent. This caused Ji-Yu to think of Chun-Shi. All those years ago, Chun-Shi had similarly cultivated so painstakingly without eating or sleeping, and he made the best use of every minute of his time to strengthen himself. The only difference between them was perhaps their environment. All those years ago, Chun-Shi had numerous enemies and scarce resources, to the point even the grand collapsing fist he cultivated was an ordinary martial technique bought from a store. He wasn't like these two little fellows who cultivated top-Dao grade martial techniques, didn't have to worry about their survival, and just had to clear their minds and cultivate to allow themselves to grow into an expert in an extremely short period of time. That little fellow has already entered the dark reverie now, right? The upheaval of the three dimensions is at hand, and perhaps being swept into this great vortex will allow him to grow faster. Ji-Yu muttered as his gaze shot towards the distant horizon, and he seemed as if he'd seen through countless expanses of space to look down upon the three dimensions, causing him to seem exceedingly profound. The dark reverie, a surpassingly beautiful, extremely magnificent, and vast continent. It was a magical land that possessed countless legends and cultures. Since the absolute beginning until now, numerous leading figures that shook the heavens and earth were born on this continent. It created various cultivation systems that were complicated like the stars in the sky, and it had passed down inheritances and profound techniques that were vast like the sea. The immortal Tao, demon races, and devil sects coexisted there. Groups of heroes rose together. A myriad of clans stood like trees in a forest, and numerous sages battled for supremacy, and legendary civilizations that were brilliant like an epic were created here. It was the place that was closest to the immortal dimension. Within the spatial passageway that was torn open, a terrifying multicolored sheen warped about as Madman Lu brought Chen-Shi along through this spatial passageway. This was the first time Chen-Shi had entered a spatial passageway that headed to a large world, and he was slightly shocked. There were extremely gorgeous and resplendent lights surging about in the surroundings of this spatial passageway, and they were warped and dashing about while emitting a horrifying aura of destruction that seemed as if he would encounter disaster by just lightly touching it. The energy of the laws that covers the wall of space, and only earthly immortal realm experts are capable of slightly controlling a trace of it. Madman Lu explained absent-mindedly. The energy of the laws. Chun-Shi suddenly came to an understanding. When Tao insight attained the state of perfection, it would transform into a law. But one had to experience the heavenly tribulation to control the laws, and this was something faced by earthly immortal realm experts and was still extremely far away from him. Senior, how much longer is it? Chun-Shi couldn't help but ask. Don't passageways torn open in space ordinarily allow one to arrive instantaneously? It isn't the same. Madman Lu shook his head. I would naturally be able to execute teleportation abilities and flash through an ordinary passageway torn open in space. But we're heading to the dark reverie now, and it's a large world. So we have to pass through its spatial walls before we'll be able to arrive there. So that's how it is. Chun-Shi nodded slightly. Don't underestimate these spatial walls. It's because of the great contribution of these spatial walls that it's difficult for people from the worlds outside the dimension to invade the three dimensions, and the energy of the laws that cover it would directly annihilate all heretics that are harmful to the three dimensions. Madman Lu explained. The other worlds outside the dimension? Where are they? Chun-Shi asked curiously. He couldn't help it because he was from a minor world, and he possessed pitiable knowledge of the entire three dimensions. I've never been there, I don't know either. Madman Lu's reply was extremely direct. When he saw Chun-Shi still wanted to ask something, he hurriedly withdrew an azure jade slip and tossed it over. This is the Dark Reverie Manual. and everything related to the dark reverie is recorded within it. Xianxia was stunned momentarily before he raised his hand to receive it, and there were only 3 simple seal characters on the Jade Slip Dark Reverie Manual. After he activated the Jade Slip, it was like a book that was replaced with shadows of light, and it reflected numerous images and row after row of its contents. The 10 great immortal sects, the 6 lineages of the Devil Sect, the primordial clans, Buddha's Sea, Doomcore region, untold stories and anecdotes, geography of the world, cultivation paradises. The row after row of contents emitted brilliant golden rays of light that were over 1,000 in number. As he browsed through all of them, Xianxia was extremely shocked in his heart because never had he imagined that merely a continent would actually be so vast and boundless. Not only did this book record the distribution of the various powers in the Dark Reverie, there was also a map of the geography, ancient secrets, astronomy, anecdotes, miscellaneous things. It contained and embraced everything. It was simply like an encyclopedia. If he wanted to really browse through it completely, then by relying on the cultivation of Xianxia's soul at this moment, he would probably require more than a year because its contents were so abundant that it could be said to be vast like an ocean. At this moment, Xianxia understood that there were similarly countless dynasties that were like an array of stars in the Dark Reverie. However, it was the powerful forces of the 10 great immortal sects, the devil sects, demon clans, and primordial clans that truly ruled over this continent. They stood far above the myriad of living beings and possessed extremely old inheritances. Yet there wasn't a single power that dared say they were capable of controlling the entire Dark Reverie by themselves. Because the Dark Reverie was truly too enormous, to the point that it exceeded the imagination of all. Moreover, the competition here was extremely intense as well. There were countless sects that were annihilated practically every single day, and there were also new powers that rose slowly like bamboo shoots after the rain. But all in all, it was still the 10 great immortal sects, the 6 lineages of the Devil Sect, the primordial clans, and the other extraordinary powers that possessed the most formidable strength, and they firmly controlled the various regions of the Dark Reverie. The 9 Radiant Sword Sect was situated in the northern region of the Dark Reverie, and there was a mountain range that covered an area of a few hundreds of thousands of kilometers situated there. Its name was the 9 Radiance Mountain Range. The 9 Radiant Sword Sect was situated within this boundlessly vast mountain range. "We've arrived." Madman Lu spoke out abruptly. As soon as he finished speaking, swish, a vast expanse of the heavens and the earth appeared ahead in the spatial passageway, and Madman Lu directly flew over while bringing Xianxia along with him. "This is the 9 Radiance Mountain Range?" Xianxia looked down at the mountain range below him. What entered his eyes was an expanse of luxuriant and lofty mountain range. A myriad of peaks stood towering and rose up one after the other while a roiling sea of clouds drifted and fluttered above it, causing this expanse of the heavens and the earth to seem magnificent, like a painting. The heavens and the earth here were vast, grand, and profound. Moreover, not only did the air contain extremely dense spirit energy, there were even strands of faint immortal energy suffused within it. It wasn't just that. As he stood in this expanse of the heavens and the earth, Xianxia was able to clearly sense that the energy of the heaven Tao contained in the world was flawless and extremely lively. It circulated endlessly and was enormously different from the energy of the heaven Tao he'd sensed in the Darchu dynasty in the past. There was the only difference between a large world and a minor world. The laws of the heaven Tao in a large world was flawless, whereas it was incomplete in minor worlds. When cultivators sought the Tao, the most important step was to comprehend the laws of the heaven Tao. If the laws of the heaven Tao weren't complete, then the path a cultivator walked on was bound to not go on for long. Conversely, if the cultivator was able to comprehend the complete laws of the heaven Tao, then the cultivator's probability of becoming an immortal would undoubtedly increase greatly. This was the fundamental reason why extremely few heavenly immortals emerged in minor worlds. For example, the Darchu dynasty possessed numerous earthly immortal realm experts, yet there were rarely any heavenly immortals that emerged from the Darchu dynasty, and it was because the laws of the heaven Tao were incomplete. At this moment, Xianxia finally understood why everyone in the world fought to enter the Dark Reverie. It was because the possibility to become an immortal was really increased greatly when one cultivated here. Bang! Madman Lu flicked his sleeve and brushed away the sea of clouds in an area of 5,000 kilometers, and he completely revealed the true view of the 9 Radiance mountain range before Xianxia's eyes. After that, Xianxia saw that in the depths of the mountain range were 9 extremely lofty mountains that stood towering in the distribution of the 9 palaces of the 8 trigrams. They were a few tens of thousands of km tall, completely bathed in blazing divine light, and emitted extremely vast and divine auras. Xianxia was faintly able to notice that atop the 9 mountains were numerous halls standing upon them while emitting ancient auras, and they were arranged in neat rows as if they were immortal palaces built in the heavens and possessed grand magnificence that existed for eternity. When looked at from afar, Xianxia had the tiny feeling as if he was an ant in the boundless sea. All of this was truly too magnificent. You'll get used to it after seeing it a few more times. Madman Lu flicked his sleeve and brought Xianxia along to flash towards the 9 mountains. Swoosh! In practically an instant, Madman Lu had already brought Xianxia to fly into the lofty mountain at the center, and they descended onto a mountain path. The body of this mountain was like a coiled dragon that was lofty and magnificent, and there were waterfalls, fountains, and green pines that seemed to reflect waves while being blown on by the wind. The craggy mountain path was covered in layer upon layer of limestone steps that were smooth like mirrors. The surroundings were covered in wisteria, luxuriant plants and flowers, with numerous spirits herbs growing there which flowed with multicolored light and emanated a refreshing fragrance. They were actually Tao-grade spirit herbs. This peak is called True Martial, and the main hall of the 9 Radiant Sword Sect is right at the top of it. Remember, once you arrive at this peak, you must walk up and must not fly. Otherwise, even a heavenly immortal would be unable to save you. Madman Lu spoke as he walked up the stairway. Looks like this entire mountain has extremely formidable restrictions set up upon it by an almighty figure, and it's even capable of annihilating heavenly immortals. Xianxia seemed to have thought of something as he followed closely behind Madman Lu all the way up. All along the way, Xianxia noticed that spirit WRMS resided on the precipices. Phoenix nests were built on the enormous trees. Red-crowned cranes fluttered about in the forest, and turtles swam about in the rivers and streams. The true Martial Peak could really be said to be extremely gorgeous like an immortal paradise, and there were numerous rare living creatures and strange species living on it. Moreover, various types of beasts could be seen everywhere. Even though the auras of these living creatures were restrained, no matter how restrained they still caused Xianxia to feel a strong threatening feeling, and they seemed to be extremely formidable. The origins of the disciples of my 9 Radiant Sword Sect are disregarded. No matter if it's demonkind, ghosts, or the primordial clans, all of them cultivate here, said Madman Lu. Xianxia nodded. He's browsed through the Dark Reverie manual earlier and had understood a great deal. There were a great variety of races in the Dark Reverie, and there were humans, demons, ghosts, spirits, fiends, and so on and so forth. Moreover, the primordial clans were extremely terrifying because they were various ancient clans that had continued existing since the primordial era, like the Sharkmen clan, Nine-tailed clan, Azure Flame clan, Giant Devil clan, and so on and so forth. These living creatures were distributed throughout the entire Dark Reverie like humans, so it naturally wasn't shocking that other living creatures were cultivating in the 9 Radiant Sword Sect. You log, don't you fucking move. Right when Xianxia was looking over the scene in the surroundings, he suddenly heard Madman Lu shout out loudly, and when he raised his eyes to look over, he saw a trembling young man looking at Madman Lu with a fearful expression. This young man had a head covered in green hair that hung loosely on his shoulders like seaweed. His appearance was handsome while his features seemed meek, and he was a slightly shy young man that looked to be extremely pure and soft. Were you beaten by someone again and ran over to the true Martial Peak to lie low? Madman Lu seemed to be extremely furious, and his expression went grim as he scolded to young man to his face. You really have a wooden head. If someone hits you, then don't you know how to fight back? Why did I fucking take such a useless disciple like you? The green-haired young man was scolded to the point he lowered his head while his handsome face was covered in an embarrassed expression, and he seemed like an ostrich that wished for nothing more than to bury his head in the sand. You really piss me off. Can you have some backbone for once? The face of your Azure Phoenix race has been completely lost by you. Madman Lu was even more irritated when he saw the young man's current appearance, and he raised his hand with the intention to slap him numerous times, yet endured it in the end. Senior Chan, she coughed dryly as he was slightly unable to bear the sight of this. This senior brother has an indifferent disposition and stands aloof from worldly success. Asking this of him would go against his nature, and it will do more harm than good. The young man glanced at Xianxia with gratitude when he heard this, and he seemed as if he wanted to make Xianxia a good friend of his. Humph! What fucking nature! If he doesn't know how to fight for things, then he can only be bullied by others for his entire lifetime. Madman Lu grunted, yet his expression had already eased up greatly. Xianxia smiled as he nodded lightly towards the young man, and he said in his heart, "Looks like the competition between disciples in the 9 Radiant Sword sect is extremely great."